Chapter 1800. What? The glazed fire dragon suddenly came to its senses. All its hopes and expectations were gone. It stared at Ji Tianqing angrily and scolded without hesitation. Impossible. I am a noble dragon god. Even if I die, I will not surrender to you. I was right. You despicable guy, you have finally shown your foxtail. The glazed fire dragon knew very well that no matter what Ji Tianqing was up to, his ultimate goal was to make it surrender. Therefore it had always been on guard. Even if Ji Tianqing knew its secret and pointed out its problem, it refused without hesitation. Before Ji Tianqing could speak, a clear and melodious voice suddenly rang out. Which bastard is talking about me behind my back? As the voice rang out, a ray of icy blue light lit up in front of Ji Tianqing. A furry little ice fox appeared out of thin air. Its body was petite and adorable, and its entire body was covered with icy blue fur. It also had 12 furry tails. It was surrounded by a layer of icy light, exuding a mysterious and powerful aura. Without a doubt, it was Qian Yu. The glazed fire dragon's pupils shrank as it stared at Qian Yu. Its eyes became strange. It really is a foxtail. Qian Yu's body was petite, but its big tail was so fluffy that it almost covered half of its body. It flew above the glazed fire dragon's head and circled around it. After looking at it carefully, it let out a mocking laugh. Tisk. TSK. It's a fire dragon. How did you end up in such a miserable state, lying on the ground like a stone? The glazed fire dragon stared at it fiercely and shouted angrily. You lowly fox, how dare you mock a noble dragon god? Qian Yu sneered and said in a mocking tone. Oh, it's a female dragon. What a coincidence. My silly brother, Xueqi, is not married yet. Little female dragon, I think you are quite pitiful. Why don't I be merciful and talk to Xueqi and let him marry you? The glazed fire dragon was full of shame and anger. Its eyes were almost spitting fire. It cursed angrily. Damn you stinky fox, how dare you humiliate me? Qian Yu looked at it innocently and explained in a sincere manner. Why are you angry? I am not humiliating you. I am just pitying you. The glazed fire dragon was so angry that its eyes were covered with a layer of red. The noble dignity of a mystical dragon had been trampled on time and time again. It was starting to get irritated. Qian Yu saw how angry she was, and put on a compassionate attitude. She shook her head and sighed. Sigh, you little female dragon, why are you as stupid as Blackie? Are all of you dragons so stubborn? Or are you too big in your brains? Just now, old Ji asked you to follow him. When did he ask you to submit to him? The glazed fire dragon was Qian Yu dragon was dragon? Moreover, the one who had scolded and educated it was a fox with a lowly bloodline. The glazed fire dragon was even more furious. It wanted to tear Qian Yu into pieces or chew him into pieces. But its power and body were sealed. It could not move at all. No matter how angry it was, it could only stare. After taking a few deep breaths, it suppressed the anger in its heart and shouted at Ji Tianqing. Boy, ask this stinky fox to go away. Otherwise, we have nothing to talk about. Qian Yu didn't get angry. Instead, she nodded her head and said, Little female dragon, that's the right thing to do. As a dragon, the most important thing is to know your place. You have to judge the situation and size up the situation. That's right, I'm not a magnanimous heavenly fox. I'll remember what you scolded me. I am waiting for you to apologize to me. Also, if you are not sincere, I will not accept it. Qian Yu said seriously. Then he returned to Ji Tianqing and squatted on his shoulder. The glazed fire dragon was so angry that it almost went crazy. It breathed heavily and cursed. Damn fox, don't expect me to apologize. In your dreams. Qian Yu did not argue with it. He just smiled and said, Don't worry. You will. Ji Tianqing saw that the time was right. He said, Fire dragon, you heard it just now. If you want me to help you solve the problem of the blood imbalance, you have to follow me. Do you understand? You are following me, not submitting to me. The glazed fire dragon was stunned. He asked coldly, What's the difference? Ji Tianqing explained, You just need to follow me. I will try to solve the problem for you and help you improve your strength. I already have a black dragon. I will not accept you. Your master is my wife. Also, you and my wife are friends and partners. You are not master and servant, just like me and the black dragon. Do you understand? The glazed fire dragon blinked, and a look of relief flashed across its eyes. You mean, I don't have to submit to you, and I don't have to sign a master and servant contract with your wife? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Of course. The glazed fire dragon calmed down and let out a sigh of relief. Although a mediocre human does not deserve to be friends with a noble dragon god, let alone be the dragon god's master. However, since you know the dragon god very well and your attitude is very sincere, I can consider following you. Obviously, the glazed fire dragon was not used to the change of identity yet. He also could not put down his dignity as a dragon god. He was still looking for a way out. Qian Yu laughed and said jokingly, What a silly dragon. Still so arrogant. I'm really worried about Blackie's life after marriage. What did you say? The glazed fire dragon stared at him coldly. He shouted fiercely, Shut up! Qian Yu crossed his arms and said with a smile, Little female dragon, don't think too highly of yourself. Don't feel wronged. To be honest, it is your blessing to be able to follow old G. What you've said today will make you feel so ashamed that you won't be able to show your face in the future. One day, you will understand that your so-called dignity as a dragon god is just a joke in front of old G and me. Hee hee hee. The glazed fire dragon sneered and retorted, You are just a rank 9 primordial soul realm demonic beast. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Qian Yu retorted mercilessly, A dragon who has cultivated for a few thousand years has not broken through to the martial sage realm. How dare you call yourself a dragon god? Are you a fake dragon? If it were me and Blackie, we would not need a few thousand years. We would have become gods within 200 years. The glazed fire dragon scolded in exasperation. Ridiculous. Arrogant and ignorant. What a joke. Seeing that the two of them were bickering, Ji Tianqing had to interrupt. All right, both of you, be quiet. Let's get down to business. Little fire dragon, I will tell you how to solve the imbalance in your blood. You have to follow me according to our agreement. What do you think? The glazed fire dragon rolled its eyes. After thinking for a while, it nodded and agreed. Chapter 1801. Qian Yu smiled when he saw the glazed fire dragon agree so readily. He glanced at the glazed fire dragon and transmitted his voice to Ji Tianqing. Old Ji, the little female dragon agreed so readily. I'm afraid it's a trap. I think it will pretend to be obedient after you tell it the solution. When the seal is lifted, it will find a chance to escape. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change, but he secretly replied, Hee hee, Qian Yu, you've seen through the glazed fire dragon's thoughts. Qian Yu said proudly, Of course. With its little intelligence, it's almost the same as the little black dragon. How can it hide from me? Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, Don't worry. Since I dare to tell you the solution, I naturally have a backup plan. It wants to play tricks with me, but it's still too naive. At this time, the glazed fire dragon saw him and Qian Yu talking secretly and couldn't help but urge, Hey, quickly tell me the solution. Are you going back on your word? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said calmly, It's easy to solve the problem of the bloodline imbalance. You have to stop cultivating the fire bloodline and focus on cultivating the other two bloodlines. When the other two bloodlines are strong enough, the three bloodlines will reach a balance and your problem will be solved. Moreover, when the three bloodlines grow at the same time, your talent will skyrocket and your strength will also skyrocket. The glazed fire dragon frowned and said in a low voice, Of course I know this. You have to tell me the specific solution. How do I strengthen the other two bloodlines? Ji Tianqing said calmly, If you want to strengthen the bloodlines quickly, you need the help of a divine dragon. The little black dragon can help you. The glazed fire dragon frowned again and had a bad feeling. The little black dragon will help me? How long will it take? 3 to 5 years at least, and 100 years at most, Ji Tianqing replied casually. The glazed fire dragon was silent. It was angry and hesitant. Originally, it had planned to find a chance to escape after learning the solution. But since Ji Tianqing said so, it meant that it would follow Ji Tianqing for many years. Just as it was hesitating, Ji Tianqing continued, Actually, you don't have to hesitate or consider, because you don't have a choice at all. I can nurture you into a divine dragon that soars through the 9 heavens, but I can also kill you right now. Cultivating with me will only bring you benefits and no harm. I hope you will consider it carefully. After saying that, Ji Tianqing stopped talking and waited for the glazed fire dragon to make a decision. Qian Yu added, "By the way, little female dragon, before you make your decision, I want to tell you who we are. I believe it will be helpful to you. I'm not a demonic beast, but a 12-tailed heavenly fox, the king of spirit beasts. Little Black Dragon and I followed old Ji for a few short years, but we were able to reach our current strength from the Yuandan stage. Throughout history, no other divine beast can compare to such a speed of advancement." After introducing itself, Qian Yu pointed at Ji Tianqing and said, "Old Ji is the #1 genius since ancient times. Even the 3 martial gods are fighting over him. He only used 3 short years to reach the tribulation stage from the soul-tempering stage. In addition, he has also created countless miracles, shocking the past and the present." Ji Tianqing stood with his hands behind his back. His expression did not change, and he looked aloof. In fact, he was a little amused. He sent a voice transmission to Qian Yu, "Don't brag too much. The little female dragon may not believe it." Qian Yu said confidently, "My words are 90% true and 10% false. It has no choice but to believe it. Besides, it is so proud. It will only follow you willingly if I raise you higher." The facts proved that Qian Yu's prediction was right. The glazed fire dragon's eyes had a subtle change. It stared at Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu for a while. It was a half-step martial sage expert. Of course, it could use some secret techniques to see that Ji Tianqing was extraordinary. Although it was still weighing the pros and cons, its thoughts were already wavering. At this time, Ji Tianqing opened the sword world again and let the little black dragon out. "Little Black Dragon, come out and meet me." As his voice fell, a black light flashed in the air, and a black dragon that was 100 feet long appeared. Roar! The black dragon let out a powerful and majestic dragon roar. Its body emitted a mysterious black light, and its body grew rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it became a black dragon that was 10 miles long. It was as huge as a mountain. It flew around the glazed fire dragon twice, and then put its head in front of the glazed fire dragon and greeted it kindly. "Little female dragon, hello. I am the little black dragon." Hearing its greeting, Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes and could not help but cover his forehead. Qian Yu did not know whether to laugh or cry. She showed an exasperated expression and reminded the little black dragon, "Little Black, are you stupid? How can you call someone like that? Do you still want a wife?" The little black dragon was taken aback. It said innocently, "You've been calling it that just now. There shouldn't be a problem, right?" Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu were speechless. They could only show helpless and sympathetic expressions. Sigh. These 2 dragons are so stupid. What a perfect match. Poor little black dragon. No one ever taught it how to pursue the opposite sex. It's too late to cram it now. Fortunately, this was the first time the glazed fire dragon had seen one of its own kind. It was very excited and automatically ignored the little black dragon's words. It looked at the little black dragon with shining eyes. After a long while it said, "I've waited for several thousand years. I've finally seen one of my own kind. Even though you're still very weak, you are indeed a divine dragon. You have the right to be my friend." The little black dragon saw its friendly attitude and its uneasy heart calmed down. It hurriedly asked, "I'm called Little Black Dragon. What's your name?" "Name?" The glazed fire dragon thought for a moment, then said, "Call me Glazed." The little black dragon nodded and said in a solemn voice, "Glazed, I can swear to the dragon god that old G is our best companion and teacher. He won't hurt us and will help us quickly grow until we reach the divine realm. You have to believe me. Don't stay in the mountain of flames. Following old G is the wisest decision." The glazed fire dragon could choose not to believe Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu, but the little black dragon swearing in the name of the dragon god was too sacred and solemn. It had to believe. After thinking for a moment, it finally agreed. "Fine, I'll believe you this once. Perhaps you will be the opportunity for me to change my fate. Ji Tianqing, I'm willing to follow you and treat you as a friend. I'll treat you with sincerity. I also hope that you can fulfill your promise and help me resolve the problem of my bloodline imbalance." After it finished speaking, Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "That's good. In the future, you will feel incomparably fortunate because of the decision you made today." The glazed fire dragon frowned. It couldn't accept this argument and instinctively wanted to refute. But it held back and said in a calm voice, "Since we're friends, you should undo the seal for me." Ji Tianqing wasn't afraid that it would escape. He waved his hand and released several streaks of dazzling light to undo the seal. Chapter 1802. Although the glazed fire dragon's seal had been lifted, but its injuries were too serious, and its magic power was exhausted, so it could only fly with difficulty. As for escaping, it was not that it had not thought about it. However, after careful consideration, it dispelled this idea. Just as the little black dragon said, following Ji Tianqing was the best choice for it now. Whoosh! Whoosh! The little black dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu, and flew over the ruins with the glazed fire dragon, rushing towards the edge of the desert. Ji Tianqing knew that Yun Yao had been secretly watching the battle between the glazed fire dragon and Madame Jean in the Golden Sand Desert. She had the water reversal divine sword and the protection of Ji by Xueqi, so she was safe. While he was flying, he was still thinking about his future plans. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. Ji Tianqing and the three divine beasts arrived at the edge of the desert, but found that the surroundings were empty, and there was no one around. Strange, where did Yao Yao and Ji by Xueqi go? Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion and quickly released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. He searched the sea of fire within a radius of 100 miles, but he could not find Yun Yao and Ji by Xueqi. In fact, the ground of this region was also completely undamaged. There were no signs of battle. Yao Yao won't leave so easily. She will definitely wait for me here. Even if she has something to do and has to leave, she will definitely send me a communication jade slip. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, and a bad premonition surged in his heart. He ordered the black dragon and Qian Yu, "Everyone split up and search, and then meet here." The black dragon and Qian Yu nodded to show that they understood, and immediately split up to search in the desert. Ji Tianqing was still worried, so he took out a communication jade slip and sent it to Yun Yao. He waited for 100 breaths of time, but there was no reply from Yun Yao. This made him even more uneasy, and he felt that something must have happened to Yun Yao. The glazed fire dragon followed behind him. Seeing his serious expression, it asked, "Ji Tianqing, what happened?" Ji Tianqing didn't hide anything from it. He said in a low voice, "My wife and 2 of my guards were supposed to be waiting for me here. I don't know why they disappeared. I had a bad feeling that they were in some kind of danger. Lioli, this area is your territory. Other than you, are there any other powerhouses or ferocious beasts hiding here?" The glazed fire dragon shook its head and said firmly, "This is my territory. How can there be other demonic beasts here? If something happened to your wife, it was most likely the work of other adventurers." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Other than him and Yun Yao, there were only 4 groups of adventurers who entered the abyss. The people of Black Feather Association were all killed, and Granny Jean, Ronger and the other 2 also left. The remaining 2 groups of adventurers had yet to show their faces. Among them, the strongest group was Bright Sword Martial Lord, Qian Yu and the others. Thinking of this, the figures of Bright Sword Martial Lord and the others immediately appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind. Could it be Bright Sword Martial Lord, Qian Yu and the others? Just as he was muttering to himself, a sneer suddenly came from the edge of the desert behind him. "Heh. You're not stupid, kid. You guessed the result so quickly." Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw a white-haired old man in a purple robe standing in the sea of fire at the edge of the desert. The old man held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand, and wore a 3-flower 7-star crown on his head. He looked like a dignified expert. He was Bright Sword Martial Lord. Ji Tianqing frowned. He stared coldly at Bright Sword Martial Lord and asked in a deep voice, "Where's my wife?" Bright Sword Martial Lord stroked his white beard and revealed a confident smile. He said slowly, "Your wife? Of course she was safe and sound. However, this is only temporary. How long more can she be safe? Whether or not she can survive will depend on your performance." Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted and a cold killing intent surged out from his heart. He sneered and said, "I originally thought that since you were all righteous cultivators of the celestial sect of wonders, you wouldn't do such a despicable act. I didn't expect that I had overestimated you bunch of animals." Bright Sword Martial Lord was not angry and said with a smile, "Brat, You can't be so naive as to think that just because we came from a righteous sect, we must be good people, right? As long as there are enough benefits, as long as the temptation is big enough, good people will become bad people, and bad people will become demons. Moreover, this is the abyss in the depths of the mountain of flames. No matter what we do, no one will know. After hearing these words, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with killing intent. In his heart, he had already sentenced Bright Sword Martial Lord and the others to death. The 5 of them, including Bright Sword Martial Lord, were all dead. However, Ji Tianqing suppressed his anger and killing intent and said expressionlessly, "Previously, we had a conflict. If you want to take revenge, you can come at me. Let go of my wife and my guards. The 5 of you come at me together and we'll settle this grudge on the spot." Bright Sword Martial Lord was stunned for a moment before he raised his head and laughed loudly. "Ha! Brat, aren't you being too whimsical? Let go of your wife and guards? We went through all the trouble and wasted a lot of magical equipment and resources to capture your wife and your guards. How can we let them go? Do you think that we did everything we could to capture your wife just to vent our anger?" Ji Tianqing had already guessed the answer, but he still asked in a deep voice, "Then what do you want to do?" "You already know the answer." Bright Sword Martial Lord sneered and pointed at the glazed fire dragon behind him. He said, "Use that glazed fire dragon to exchange for the lives of your wife and guards." After he finished speaking, he thought for a moment and added, "And the black sword you used before?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "All right, I can give you the glazed fire dragon and the sword, but I want to see my wife and guards first." Bright Sword Martial Lord originally thought that he would refuse, but he didn't expect him to agree so straightforwardly. The words that he had prepared earlier were actually useless. A hint of anger flashed across the glazed fire dragon's eyes as it glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing. It sent a sound transmission and asked, "Ji Tianqing, is this what you mean by treating me with sincerity? We just reached an agreement and you want to give me away in the blink of an eye? You really are a bastard who goes back on his word." Ji Tianqing did not even turn his head as he secretly sent a sound transmission. "Luli, do you know what a delaying tactic is? If you're not too stupid, you should have guessed my plan. There is only one kind of person who can threaten me, and that is a dead person." The glazed fire dragon was slightly startled. It was intimidated by his domineering aura and killing intent. It asked in disbelief, "You want to kill them all?" Ji Tianqing replied with a sound transmission, "Otherwise, how can I calm my anger?" Chapter 1803. Bright Sword Martial Lord thought for a moment, then dispelled the worries in his heart and revealed a sneer of success. "Humph. At least you know what's good for you. You know that you have no choice but to obey and submit. However, I still have to warn you, don't even think about playing any tricks. If you dare to have any thoughts of disloyalty, I will let your wife and guards die on the spot." After saying that, Bright Sword Martial Lord waved his hand towards the cave behind him. 3,000 feet behind him, in a wide cave filled with heavenly fire, several experts immediately walked out. The leader was a tall and sturdy old man wearing a golden robe. He had a pair of eye-catching white eyebrows. His attire was the same as Bright Sword Martial Lord's. They were both holding a horsetail whisk and carrying an ancient sword on their backs. However, his left hand shone with a golden light, condensing into a golden net. Imprisoned in the golden net was a woman in a white dress who was as beautiful as a fairy. It was Yun Yao. At this moment, Yun Yao's face was deathly pale, and there were still traces of blood at the corner of her mouth. It was obvious that she had suffered heavy injuries. Moreover, her hands were tied behind her back, and her magic power was sealed. It was difficult for her to struggle and move. Even her reverse water divine sword had disappeared without a trace. No one knew where it had gone. Seeing Yun Yao in such a situation, Ji Tianqing felt rather pained and worried. The killing intent in his heart became even more violent. Following behind the golden-robed old man and Yun Yao were 3 dignified young men. They all had the strength of the 3rd or 4th level of the Tribulation Realm. The 3 of them escorted Ji Bai and Xueqi out of the cave. Ji Bai and Xueqi's injuries were extremely miserable. Their bodies were already badly mutilated, and they were completely dyed in blood. The 2 of them also had their magic power sealed. They were tied up by mysterious black ropes and were unable to move or struggle. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that before the 2 of them were captured, they must have resisted and struggled with all their might. The 2 of them were so heavily injured. It was most likely because they were protecting Yun Yao. Such a scene caused his eyes to become even gloomier. His eyes contained a cold aura of death. The golden-robed elder and 3 young men escorted Yun Yao and Ji by Xueqi to the side of Bright Sword Martial Lord. Bright Sword Martial Lord looked at Ji Tianqing and said with a sneer, "Brat, your wife and guards are all here. You've seen them too. Now, hand over that glazed fire dragon and your treasured sword to me." Ji Tianqing stared at him fiercely and said, "It's only fair that we give you the goods and let you go." Bright Sword Martial Lord immediately sneered in disdain. "Hee hee, do you think we're trading on equal terms? Too naive. You have no choice but to hand over the glazed fire dragon and the sword. Otherwise, I'll kill them now." As he spoke, Honorable Sword Martial Lord pulled out the sword on his back and pointed it at Yun Yao and Ji by Xueqi. Ji Tianqing knew that the other party was blinded by greed and had reached the point of being extremely vicious. He didn't dare to gamble with Yun Yao's safety, so he could only suppress his killing intent and anger for the time being. After all, Yun Yao was his biggest weakness, his most fatal weakness. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand and released a dazzling golden light that wrapped around the glazed fire dragon. Under his suppression, the glazed fire dragon's body quickly shrank, becoming more than 3 feet long. In the process of being suppressed, the glazed fire dragon did not forget to struggle and resist. Then, Ji Tianqing took out the Burial of Heaven sword. He held the glazed fire dragon in his left hand and the Burial of Heaven sword in his right hand as he walked towards Honorable Sword Martial Lord. Even though he had been forced to compromise, Honorable Sword Martial Lord was very vigilant and wary of him, unwilling to let him get close. "Stop. Don't come over. Just send the glazed fire dragon and the treasured sword over." Ji Tianqing could only stop 3,000 feet away from him. He waved his hand and released 2 golden lights, sending the glazed fire dragon and the Burial of Heaven sword out. Shwa! When the 2 golden lights flew in front of him, Honorable Sword Martial Lord reached out and grabbed the glazed fire dragon and the Burial of Heaven sword. The Burial of Heaven sword did not move at all, as if it was a dead object. However, the glazed fire dragon struggled with all its might and continuously let out roars of grief and indignation. On Honorable Sword Martial Lord's old face, an incomparably proud and excited smile blossomed. "Ha ha ha! The legendary divine dragon has finally fallen into my hands." In his excitement, he casually threw the Burial of Heaven sword to Chen Yu. He held the sealed glazed fire dragon and observed it with a burning gaze. The golden-robed elder, Chen Yu, and the others were also surging with excitement and excitement. "That's great! With the glazed fire dragon, there's hope for our sect to rise. With the glazed fire dragon as our sect's guardian beast, our Azure sect will definitely flourish and our strength will increase explosively. In the future, who will dare to contend against our sect? Honorable Sword Martial Uncle's plan is brilliant. So many adventurers came here and fought for the glazed fire dragon, even losing their lives. In the end, we obtained the glazed fire dragon without any effort. In the end, we have the last laugh. Ha 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 ha." The golden-robed elder and the 2 young experts were all happy and looking forward to the future of the Azure sect. Chen Yu's mood was even more excited and he was even filled with the pleasure of successfully taking revenge. He held the Burial of Heaven sword in his hand and stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment. He sneered and said, "Little bastard, weren't you very arrogant before? Now you continue to be arrogant. Weren't you very arrogant? Don't you put us in your eyes? What about now? Your beautiful wife has fallen into our hands. The glazed fire dragon that you spent so much effort to obtain, as well as your treasured sword, have to be given to us. You must be very angry, right? But so what if you're angry? I like to see you vomit blood from anger, but there's nothing you can do about it." Ha ha ha. At this moment, all the humiliation and anger that Chen Yu had suffered before had been released. His mood was carefree to the extreme. Ji Tianqing ignored him. He didn't even bother to look at him. He only stared at Honorable Sword Martial Lord with eyes as cold as knives. He said in a deep voice, "The glazed fire dragon and the treasured sword have been handed over to you. Now you should let them go." Honorable Sword Martial Lord continued to observe the glazed fire dragon. Without raising his head, he said, "Don't worry. When we leave this abyss and return to the blazing mountain, I will naturally let them go." Ji Tianqing had long expected him to answer like this. He shouted with a sinister tone, You actually didn't keep your word. Honorable Sword Martial Lord raised his head and glanced at him with contempt. He sneered and said, "Brat, you expect us villains to keep our word? Don't you think it's ridiculous?" Very good. The corner of Ji Tianqing's mouth curled into a sinister sneer. He did not say anything else. Honorable Sword Martial Lord had repeatedly infuriated him, causing the killing intent in his heart to accumulate to the extreme. He was secretly accumulating magic power. When the time came, he would release a power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Honorable Sword Martial Lord no longer wasted time with him. He waved his hand and said to everyone, "All right, it's done. We should go." After saying that, he carried the glazed fire dragon and flew out of the desert with the golden-robed elder and the 3 young men as fast as lightning. Chapter 1804. Bright Sword Martial Lord and the golden-robed elder flew side by side at the front of the group. Chen Yu and the 2 young experts, holding Ji Bai and Xueqi, followed closely behind the 2 old men. While everyone was flying, they were also staring at Ji Tianqing's movements, constantly on guard against him. Of course, in the eyes of Bright Sword Martial Lord and the others, as long as Ji Tianqing hadn't lost his mind, he definitely wouldn't dare to make a move. After all, they had hostages in their hands. Once Ji Tianqing attacked, they would immediately kill the hostages. However, no one would have thought that Ji Tianqing's counterattack plan wasn't focused on him. Just as Bright Sword Martial Lord and the others were flying through the middle of the desert, the glazed fire dragon suddenly struggled with all its might, letting out a furious roar. In fact, it had secretly absorbed the glazed heavenly flame and had already recovered 10% of its magic power. However, it had been hiding before, pretending that it didn't have the power to fight back. Now that it had suddenly erupted with all its strength, it immediately destroyed the 5-colored light barrier on its body and broke the seal that Bright Sword Martial Lord had temporarily set up. Only Ji Tianqing knew its 4 vital points and could truly seal it. Glorious Sword Martial Lord's seal existed in name only to it. Bang! With an explosive sound, the 5-colored light barrier shattered into countless fragments that flew in all directions. Bright Sword Martial Lord's expression changed on the spot. He hurriedly waved his palm to cast a spell, wanting to seal the glazed fire dragon again. Facing such an unexpected event, his first thought was to seal the glazed fire dragon, not attack it. After all, he wanted to obtain the glazed fire dragon and turn it into the Azure Sect's guardian beast. He never thought of harming it. The glazed fire dragon let out a roar, and its body suddenly became 10 miles long. With a sweep of its tail, it sent Bright Sword Martial Lord flying. Caught off guard, Bright Sword Martial Lord was sent flying tens of thousands of feet away, smashing into the desert. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could get up, the glazed fire dragon turned into a golden light and fled into the depths of the desert. At the same time, the burial of heaven in Chen Yu's hand also lit up with a cold black light, releasing an incomparably sharp sword chi. Swish! A cold sword light flashed as the burying the heaven sword cut off Chen Yu's right arm with an unstoppable might. Chen Yu's right arm was cut off at the shoulder. The entire arm fell to the ground, and blood spurted out from the wound. Ah! The heart-wrenching pain caused his body to shake violently, and he let out a shrill scream. The successive upheavals caused everyone to be stunned for a moment, and their expressions became very unsightly. No one would have thought that the glazed fire dragon, who was already heavily injured and on the verge of death, would actually be able to erupt with a terrifying power and injure the Bright Sword Martial Lord. The pitch-black sword also seemed to have its own life and intelligence. It cut off Chen Yu's arm with a single slash, and even used a mysterious sword technique to attack the other 2 youths. The golden-robed elder was the first to recover from his shock. He shouted angrily and chased after the glazed fire dragon. Bastard! Don't even think about escaping. He held the imprisoned Yun Yao in his left hand and a sword in his right hand. He stabbed out a sword light that filled the sky, intercepting the escaping glazed fire dragon. At the same time, the other 2 youths also put down Ji Bai and Xueqi and drew their swords to block the attack of the burial of heaven sword. The scene immediately became chaotic. The Bright Sword Martial Lord and the others also lost their composure and found it difficult to maintain their calm. And at this time, Ji Tianqing, who had been accumulating power, finally released a monstrous killing intent and brazenly made his move. White Tiger Sacred Sword. He roared like a large bell and summoned his 1,000-foot-tall primordial spirit golden sword. His body also turned into a golden flame and fused with the primordial spirit golden sword. Swish! The 1,000-foot-long golden sword carried a mountain-sized white tiger phantom as it ruthlessly slashed towards the golden-robed elder with a momentum that could split the heavens and earth. Before the sword arrived, a violent aura that could destroy everything had already enveloped the golden-robed elder. As if he had fallen into a quagmire, his speed suddenly decreased by half. If he still wanted to intercept the glazed fire dragon, he would be struck by the white tiger sacred sword. Even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. Helpless, he could only give up on chasing the glazed fire dragon and block the giant sword's attack with all his strength. Swish, swish, swish. The golden-robed elder waved his sword and slashed out sword light that filled the sky, forming a 5-colored sword net to protect himself. Boom! The white tiger sacred sword slashed down fiercely, instantly shattering the 5-colored sword net and sending the golden-robed elder flying. His magic power shield was shattered, leaving a hideous wound on his chest. It was so deep that his bones could be seen, and blood flowed out. But even so, his left hand was still holding onto the cage, unwilling to let go of Yun Yao. Kid! You're courting death! The golden-robed elder roared in rage. Dazzling flames surged out of his left hand, and he was about to kill Yun Yao. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly flew out of the primordial spirit golden sword and arrived in front of him like a ghost, throwing a punch. Star-shattering fist. Bam! A dazzling golden fist landed on the golden-robed elder's left shoulder like a shooting star, exploding with a dull thud. The golden-robed elder was sent flying again, rolling and crashing into the sea of fire thousands of feet away. The flames in his left palm immediately dissipated, and the 5-colored light shield that imprisoned Yun Yao also shattered. Yun Yao fell from the sky, falling toward the ground that was covered with golden sand. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He rushed over in a flash and pulled the severely injured Yun Yao into his arms. Swoosh! Light flashed, and he retreated 5 kilometers with Yun Yao in his arms. He hurriedly checked on Yun Yao's injuries. Yun Yao was severely injured, and her magic power was sealed. But she was not unconscious. She was still conscious. Ji Tianqing made a hand seal with both hands, and more than 60 streaks of dazzling light entered Yun Yao's body. In the blink of an eye, the seal on Yun Yao's magic power was lifted. At the same time, she also regained the ability to move and speak. Ji Tianqing asked with concern, "Yao Yao, how are you? Can you still hold on?" Yun Yao nodded and said, "Tianqing, don't worry about me. I have the divine power of immortality, so I'll be able to recover from my injuries soon." Ji Tianqing asked again, "Where's the reverse water divine sword? Did they snatch it?" "No." Yun Yao hurriedly shook her head and explained, "The reverse water divine sword has long been hidden in my mind. Unless they kill me, it's impossible for them to obtain it." "That's good." Ji Tianqing immediately heaved a sigh of relief and felt much more at ease. At this moment, Yun Yao caught a glimpse from the corner of her eye. Graceful Sword Martial Lord quietly rushed over and attacked Ji Tianqing with his sword. Her expression immediately changed, and she shouted in a low voice, "Tianqing, be careful." Ji Tianqing was already prepared. Without hesitation, he raised his palms and turned around to slap Graceful Sword Martial Lord. Heavenly Dragon Palm. Endless golden light gushed out from his palms, condensing into 2 golden dragons that were 100 feet long. With an unparalleled state, they fiercely smashed towards Graceful Sword Martial Lord. Bang bang! Before Graceful Sword Martial Lord could block, he was struck by the 2 golden dragons. Blood spurted out of his 7 orifices as he flew backwards and crashed into the desert 10 miles away. Ji Tianqing did not chase after him. He brought Yun Yao and flew towards the Burial of Heaven. Chapter 1805. Now, the Burial of Heaven sword had been restored to the sacred level. It was a true sacred sword. Under the control of the Burial of Heaven, the sacred sword used a marvelous sword technique, turning a radius of 10 miles into a sword domain. Chen Yu and the other 2 young men were enveloped by the sword light that filled the sky. They couldn't escape no matter how hard they tried. Although they all had the strength of the 3rd or 4th layer of the Tribulation Realm, they couldn't resist the strangulation of the Burial of Heaven sword at all. In just 10 breaths of time, the 3 of them were stabbed by the sword light until they were covered in wounds. It was a tragic sight. Not only did Chen Yu lose his right arm, But he also lost a leg. There were more than a dozen wounds on his chest and back. The other two young men were also mutilated. They were missing arms and legs. Their bodies were covered with sword wounds, revealing their white bones. Dark red blood dyed the three of them red. Such a result made the three of them terrified, angry, and terrified. They couldn't imagine that the sword was a dead object. How could it have life and wisdom and even use sword techniques on its own? Could it be a legendary divine weapon? Thinking of this, the three of them felt even more desperate. They had already expected their fate. At most, in a few dozen breaths of time, they would be strangled into pieces and die without a complete corpse. At this moment, Ji Tianqing arrived near the burial of Heaven's sword. Under his control, the burial of Heaven's sword opened the sword world. He sent Yun Yao into the sword world and waved his hand to send out two dazzling lights, sending Ji Bai and Xueqi in as well. The three of them stayed in the sword world to heal their injuries. Of course, it was incomparably safe. After doing all this, Ji Tianqing turned around and left, charging towards the golden-robed elder and the honorable sword martial lord. The golden-robed elder and the honorable sword martial lord stood side by side in the sky above the desert, staring at Ji Tianqing with resentment. Now the glazed fire dragon had escaped, and the three hostages had been rescued by Ji Tianqing. Their plan had completely failed, and all their efforts had been in vain. Both of them were furious and their expressions were extremely ferocious. Only by tearing Ji Tianqing into pieces could they dispel the anger in their hearts. Little bastard! You're courting death. If I don't grind your bones to dust today, I'll write my name backwards. Both of them cursed with twisted faces. Their bodies ignited with dark red flames of anger, releasing a murderous aura that soared to the sky. Swoosh! Swish! The honorable sword martial lord and the golden-robed old man spread out, attacking Ji Tianqing from the left and right. Both of them held their horsetail whisks in their left hands and wielded their swords in their right hands, charging at Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. Yin and Yang life-death sword. Both of them slashed out 9 black sword lights each, forming a black and white sword net, which flew towards Ji Tianqing's head. Ji Tianqing fearlessly rushed forward and released his ultimate move with a murderous aura. Azure Dragon's Sacred Sword. Once again, he summoned his primordial spirit golden sword. His body turned into golden flames and merged with the golden sword. The enormous sword was surrounded by soaring golden flames. It condensed into the image of a divine dragon and slashed towards the two martial lords. Boom! Crack! Amidst a deafening explosion, the Azure Dragon Sacred Sword and the black and white sword net fiercely collided, creating a shockwave that could destroy heaven and earth. The Azure Dragon image collapsed, and the primordial spirit golden sword was also sent flying back. However, the black and white sword net was also shattered, turning into sword fragments that filled the sky and scattered in the desert. Even though the honorable sword martial lord and the golden-robed old man were very strong, reaching the 6th level of the tribulation transcending realm. However, when they joined forces to deal with Ji Tianqing, they were unable to gain any advantage and could only fight him to a draw. This result caused the two of them to be incomparably shocked. Both of them widened their eyes, revealing looks of disbelief. Damned little bastard. His strength is actually this strong? Us two martial lords joining forces are actually unable to defeat him? How is this possible? The honorable sword martial lord and the golden-robed old man were a bit stunned, and a storm was set off in their hearts. However, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate. He rode the primordial spirit golden sword and charged over again. Vermilion Bird's Sacred Sword. The gigantic sword once again released a soaring scarlet flame, condensing into a mountain-sized vermilion bird image. It extended its claws and fangs, and pounced towards the two martial lords from the sky. The honorable sword martial lord and the golden-robed old man came back to their senses. They hurriedly waved their horsetail whisks and treasured swords, and at the same time, used a defensive secret technique. Mystic Heaven Qi. 5 Elements Cauldron Transformation. The horsetail whisk and treasured sword drew out streaks of dazzling light, drawing in the power of heaven and earth as they madly converged. In the blink of an eye, a 5-colored barrier of light with a radius of 3,000 meters was formed, protecting the two of them. Bang! The vermilion bird's sacred sword carried the power to destroy the heavens and earth as it struck the 5-colored barrier, causing an earth-shaking explosion. The result was without a doubt. They were evenly matched. The vermilion bird image collapsed, and the primordial spirit golden sword was sent flying. The five-colored barrier was also shattered, exploding into fragments that filled the sky and scattered in the desert. The honorable sword martial lord and the golden-robed old man were also sent flying, tumbling and landing 3,000 meters away. The berserk shockwave spread out, turning the desert within a radius of several dozen miles into ruins. A moment later, the primordial spirit golden sword rushed over again, exploding with even stronger power as it attacked the two martial lords. The two martial lords were already numb from the shock, and they didn't have time to think about anything else. They could only block with all their strength. The two sides continued to fight, and it was difficult to tell who had the upper hand. At the same time, the battle between the Sword of Burial of Heaven and the three young experts was about to end. The three young experts were all heavily injured. They were like arrows at the end of their flight, and they were extremely miserable. The Sword of Burial of Heaven decisively used its killing move, wanting to end the battle. Piercing sword. The sacred sword fiercely pierced, and a cold glint lit up at the tip of the sword. It flashed within the sea of flames. In the next instant, the ice-cold and dazzling cold glint pierced through Chen Yu's defense and pierced into his body. Bang! The dazzling cold glint blossomed from his body, and like a blazing white mushroom cloud, it rose into the air. His scarred and incomplete body was blown into fine powder on the spot, turning into a rain of blood that covered the sky and covered the earth, sprinkling into the sea of flames. Even his divine soul wasn't spared. It was directly blown into pieces by the sword glint. The most outstanding young expert of the Azure Sky sect was turned into ashes just like that. He had completely fallen. The other two young experts witnessed Chen Yu being killed with their own eyes. They were so scared that their souls left their bodies. They panicked and turned around to escape. The Sword of Burial of Heaven cut through the sky with a whoosh. It teleported several thousand feet away, catching up to a young man. Heaven-cleaving sword. The pitch-black and ice-cold sacred sword instantly expanded to 3,000 feet long. It exploded with a power that could destroy everything as it slashed down. Bang! The young man was struck by the sacred sword on the spot. His body exploded into pieces, and a large amount of blood splattered out. His divine soul was also shattered by the sacred sword. It was mixed with pieces of flesh and scattered in the sea of flames. Soon, it was burned to ashes by the heavenly fire. The last remaining young expert couldn't escape the fate of being killed by the sacred sword. He had only escaped 50 miles away when the Sword of Burial of Heaven caught up with him. Together with his divine soul, he was cut into pieces. The three young experts were all dead, and they died without a complete corpse. Chapter 1806. Ji Tianxing was currently fighting fiercely with two martial lords. The battle was earth-shattering. The colorful brilliance of magic power enveloped the desert within a radius of 100 miles. The destructive shockwaves were like a colorful tide as they continuously spread out in all directions. The desert of 100 miles had already turned into ruins. The earth was shattered, covered with ravines and pits. It was a scene of devastation. In terms of the strength of both sides, the bright sword martial lord and the golden-robed elder were stronger. However, Ji Tianxing had mastered an extraordinary sword technique and had unimaginable combat experience. His combat strength was extremely terrifying. Therefore, the two sides fought for more than 10 moves, but the outcome was still undecided. At this moment, the Sword of Burial of Heaven finally arrived. Whoosh! With a flash of cold light, the Sword of Burial of Heaven flew to the side of the primordial spirit golden sword. Ji Tianxing immediately left the primordial spirit golden sword and his figure appeared in the sea of fire. He immediately put away the primordial spirit golden sword and reached out his right hand to grab the Sword of Burial of Heaven. The moment the sacred sword appeared in his hand, his entire aura changed. It became even more berserk, domineering, and majestic, as if a peerless war god had descended. One man and one sword, they had long been connected and cooperated with each other with incomparable tacit understanding. They also complemented each other. Ji Tianxing formed a sword seal with his left hand and held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with his right hand. His robes fluttered in the wind and his entire body erupted with an extremely cold aura. Sword of the vast ocean cold. The Sword of Burial of Heaven swung and slashed out a silver-white sword light that was 10,000 feet long like a crescent moon. Swoosh! The sword light swept out, and wherever it passed, the glazed heavenly fire between heaven and earth dissipated. The ground that was filled with ravines and pits also turned from red to white and was instantly frozen. In the next instant, the silver-white sword light arrived in front of the bright sword martial lord and the golden-robed elder. Before the sword light arrived, the terrifying chill had already frozen the bodies of the two people. Their blood and meridians were about to solidify. The two of them couldn't move an inch. They were simply unable to dodge the sword light's attack. Their eyes also revealed deep fear. Bang! Bang! Two muffled sounds rang out almost at the same time. The magic power shields of the bright sword martial lord and the golden-robed elder were instantly shattered by the sword light. Both of them were sent flying back, falling into the ruins 10 miles away. After landing on the ground, the two rolled a dozen times before coming to a stop. Their bodies were cold and stiff. There was a horrifying wound on their chests and abdomens, which almost cut them in half. Some of the internal organs mixed with blood flowed out from the wound and scattered on the ground. The ground beneath them was immediately dyed red. Ah! Damned little bastard! This monarch will definitely tear you to shreds. 300 years. This lord hasn't suffered such heavy injuries in 300 years, but today, I was defeated by the sword of a nameless brat. The pain and humiliation caused the two martial lords to roar. They were so angry that they almost went berserk. The two of them picked up the internal organs from the ground and stuffed them back into their chests. Then they waved their palms and shot out a dense green light, temporarily sealing the wound and suppressing the injury. At this moment, Ji Tianqing flew over. He stood in the sea of fire and looked down at the bright sword martial lord. He said expressionlessly, "Bright sword martial lord, from the moment you captured my wife and guards and used them as hostages to threaten me, you should have thought of such a consequence. My killing intent has been determined. Only by dying can you quell my anger. Don't make any more pointless struggles. Kneel down and accept your death." The cold voice rang out, filled with a fierce and domineering aura. The bright sword martial lord was instantly infuriated. His face twisted as he cursed, "You little bastard, don't be so arrogant. The one who is going to die is you." As he spoke, his entire body lit up with flames. A crimson sword slowly appeared above his head. This sword was clearly hidden in his mind. It was his trump card, and he wouldn't use it unless it was a critical moment. The sword was about 3 feet long and curved like a snake. The hilt was shaped like a snake's head. What surprised Ji Tianqing was that the sword's entire body was sparkling and translucent. It wasn't a physical object, but was refined from many kinds of special powers. He could clearly feel that the main effect of this snake-shaped sword was to destroy a martial artist's soul. The bright sword martial lord put away his horsetail whisk and sword. With a ferocious expression, he cast a spell and controlled the snake-shaped sword to attack Ji Tianqing. 7 Spirit Soul-Absorbing Sword. Whoosh! The snake-shaped sword was like a streak of fiery light. It instantly pierced through the sea of fire and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing, aiming straight for his forehead. The golden-robed elder also made his move at the same time. He waved his horsetail whisk and sword to attack Ji Tianqing. He was deliberately restraining Ji Tianqing, wanting to create an opportunity for the bright sword martial lord. Ji Tianqing coldly snorted in disdain. With an indifferent expression, he waved the Burial of Heaven sword and launched a counterattack. "Ask the heavens with my sword." He raised his right hand and held the Burial of Heaven sword to block in front of his eyes. The fiery red snake-shaped sword stabbed over and just happened to stab the blade of the Burial of Heaven sword, producing a crisp ding sound. The Burial of Heaven sword was unharmed, but the snake-shaped sword was sent flying backwards. Ji Tianqing easily blocked the attack of the bright sword martial lord and waved his sword to attack the golden-robed elder. 7 Stars Sword. 7 giant golden swords that were 100 feet long appeared out of thin air in the sea of fire, violently slashing towards the golden-robed elder. Bang bang bang! With an earth-shaking muffled sound, the spell cast by the golden-robed elder was shattered by the sword light. He was also slashed by the sword light. His entire body was covered in blood as he flew backwards, leaving behind a left arm and a right leg that fell into the sea of fire. At this time, the bright sword martial lord controlled the 7 spirit soul-absorbing sword and stabbed out more than a dozen fiery red sword lights towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing still dealt with it calmly. With an indifferent expression, he shouted in a low voice, "Heaven and earth Dharma body." A mysterious invisible force surged out of his body and instantly absorbed the power of heaven and earth within a radius of hundreds of miles, condensing into a dark golden shield. The oval-shaped shield was like an eggshell, protecting him. The seven-spirit soul-absorbing sword hit the shield, producing a muffled bang-bang-bang sound, but it was sent flying back. The shield was intact. Ji Tianqing waved his sword again and used his ultimate skill. Great Freedom Soul Destruction Slash. He waved the Burial of Heaven sword with all his strength, slashing out 3 invisible swords that slashed towards the golden-robed elder 10 miles away. The golden-robed elder was already seriously injured and was circulating his energy to suppress his injuries. He was not on guard at all. Ji Tianqing actually used such an invisible sword technique. Bang bang bang. At the soul level, 3 muffled sounds exploded. The golden-robed elder's body instantly stiffened. He stood rooted to the ground like a stone sculpture, no longer moving. Although on the surface, his physical body did not seem to have any fatal injuries. But in reality, the 3 invisible swords had already shattered his divine soul. The golden-robed elder's divine soul was destroyed, and he was completely dead. After dealing with him, Ji Tianqing focused on dealing with the bright sword martial lord. After the 2 sides exchanged a few moves, Ji Tianqing used his ultimate sword technique and defeated the 7-spirit soul-absorbing sword. When the snake-shaped sword shattered, the bright sword martial lord's divine soul suffered a backlash. Blood spurted out of his 7 orifices on the spot, and his consciousness became blurry. Chapter 1807. Bright Sword Martial Lord, the Golden-Robed Elder, Chen Yu, and the 2 young experts all died in the desert. Although Bright Sword Martial Lord's plan was very ingenious and sinister, they almost succeeded. They could have obtained the Glazed Fire Dragon and the Sword of Burial of Heaven and become the final winner. But they failed in the end. They didn't understand Ji Tianqing's strength, nor did they expect that the Glazed Fire Dragon had reached an agreement with Ji Tianqing to help him fight back. What was most unbelievable to them was that even an ice-cold and deathly still sword had intelligence like a human, and could actually use a marvelous sword technique. Ji Tianqing had taken his revenge and had no more regrets. He put away the Sword of Burial of Heaven, turned around, and flew to the edge of the desert. Not far away, Black Dragon and Qian Yu were rushing over at lightning speed. Previously, they were sent out by Ji Tianqing to search for Yun Yao's whereabouts around the desert, so they missed this battle. The 2 of them returned to Ji Tianqing's side and asked about the situation with concern. After learning that Yun Yao and the other 2 were safe and everything was over, the 2 of them were completely relieved. Then, Ji Tianqing rode Black Dragon and continued on his way. When he arrived at the edge of the desert, he saw the Glazed Fire Dragon waiting in the Sea of Fire. Seeing Ji Tianqing's arrival, the Glazed Fire Dragon hurriedly came up to him and asked curiously, "Ji Tianqing, has the matter been resolved?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said indifferently, "I've killed them all." The Glazed Fire Dragon was stunned for a moment. Its eyes widened and it asked incredulously, "It's only been a quarter of an hour and you've killed those 5 experts? The strength of those 2 white-bearded old men has surpassed the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm." It obviously couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing could accomplish such a feat with his own strength. This was too unbelievable. Ji Tianqing stopped discussing this issue. He looked at it with a smile and said, "Previously, I asked you to resist with all your might and take the opportunity to escape. You did a good job. Originally, I thought that you might take this opportunity to escape from the abyss and really escape. I didn't expect you to be smart enough to wait for me here." The Glazed Fire Dragon curled its lips and said, "That's because you succeeded. That's why I kept my promise. If you had been killed by those people, I wouldn't have waited for you here. Fortunately, you won. This proves that I have a good eye for people." Qian Yu squatted on Ji Tianqing's shoulder and mercilessly added, "What kind of judgment do you have? Weren't we the ones who told you?" The Glazed Fire Dragon frowned and coldly glanced at Qian Yu. He said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, my injuries are too serious. I need to find a safe place to heal." Ji Tianqing didn't want to see it bickering with Qian Yu, so he opened the sword world and took it in. After settling down the Glazed Fire Dragon, Ji Tianqing left the desert with Qian Yu and the Black Dragon, flying towards the top of the abyss. Outside the Heavenly Fire Abyss, on a mountain peak 100 miles away from the abyss, an icy light shield with a radius of 10 feet sat on the flat mountain peak. There were 3 figures in the light shield. It was Grandma Jean, Jeyu, and Ronger. Although Grandma Jin's injuries were serious, she was still a martial saint. After a few hours of recuperation, she had woken up and her injuries had stabilized. Jeyu and Ronger's injuries were lighter. After a few hours of recuperation, they had recovered half of their magic power and their injuries were not serious. At this time, the three of them were standing in the icy light shield, looking at the abyss with anticipation. Jeyu was a little anxious and couldn't help but ask, "Grandma, it's been a few hours. Why hasn't Master Tianqing come up?" Ronger was also anxious and asked, "Grandma, do you think Tianqing is in danger?" Grandma Jean looked at the abyss calmly and said in a complicated tone, "When we left, I had already severely injured the glazed fire dragon and exhausted its magic power. With that kid's strength, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with a fire dragon at the end of its flight." Hearing this, Jeyu couldn't help but frown and said gloomily, "Sigh, we took such a big risk and paid such a big price to seriously injure the glazed fire dragon. I didn't expect that we didn't get anything, but that kid took advantage of it. Although he did save us and I shouldn't have such thoughts, I still feel a little aggrieved." Grandma Jin's expression was still calm and she said in a neither fast nor slow tone, "There's nothing to be aggrieved about. Maybe this is opportunity and fate." Jeyu and Ronger were silent. Grandma Jin's state of mind was so calm that the regret and aggrieved in their hearts quickly dissipated. After a moment of silence, Ronger asked, "Grandma, since you have already guessed the result, what are we waiting for?" Grandma Jean said with a burning gaze, "Wait for him to come out and confirm one thing." "What is it?" Jeyu was puzzled. Grandma Jean replied, "His identity." "His identity?" Ronger frowned doubtfully and asked in confusion, "But he only said that his name is Tianqing and he didn't want to reveal anything else." The corners of Madame Jin's mouth curled up into a smile as she said meaningfully, "Tianqing. Don't you think that this name sounds familiar?" After her reminder, Jeyu and Ronger were startled and revealed a thoughtful expression. Jeyu suddenly thought of something and frowned. "I remember now. This name does sound familiar. I've heard of it before." Ronger turned to look at her and asked, "Mistress, where have you heard of it?" Jeyu thought for a moment and said in a serious tone, "About a few months ago, the divine emissary of Mount God came to visit. When your master received the divine emissary, the two of them talked about a person. According to the divine emissary, the first disciple of Mount God selected this year was called Ji Tianqing. He was a genius that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. Even the divine lord of Taihao gave him a divine decree and conferred him the title of Son of God. Later, that disciple of God represented the divine kingdom of Taihao and participated in the 3 great divine kingdoms exchange. He won first place and was hailed as the top genius of the continent. Unfortunately, after the exchange, that genius left the divine kingdom of Taihao." Hearing this, Ronger revealed a shocked expression and said in disbelief, "There's such a genius? His name is Ji Tianqing? Mistress, then why did he leave the divine kingdom of Taihao? Where did he go?" Jeyu frowned and said in a strange tone, "At that time, your master and the divine emissary were talking. When I went in to pour tea, I heard these words. I don't know where Ji Tianqing went or why he left." After saying this, Jeyu looked at Grandma Jean and asked with a burning gaze, "Grandma, do you mean that Mr. Tianqing is very likely to be the first disciple of Mount God?" Chapter 1808. Jeyu and Ronger were both silent. Their hearts were filled with shock and anticipation. They also wanted to know if Mr. Tianqing in the Abyss was the legendary #1 prodigy of the continent. Ronger's mood was even more complicated, and her eyes kept changing. Previously, when she saw Yun Yao, she felt a little ashamed of her inferiority and retreated. If Mr. Tianqing was really the #1 prodigy of the continent, the last hope in her heart would be destroyed. She did not dare to hope that she would be favored by the #1 prodigy. After hesitating for a long time, she asked Grandma Jean in a low voice, "Grandma, do you know why Ji Tianqing left the God Nation? Where did he go?" Grandma Jean nodded slightly and looked at her with a complicated expression. She said in a low voice, "It is said that Ji Tianqing went to the Luo Shui God Nation after leaving the vast God Nation. He wanted to reunite with his wife. His wife is not only the goddess of the Luo Shui God Nation, but also a peerless beauty." Ronger's body stiffened when she heard this news. She was stunned. Her face was pale, and her mind was in a mess. Many thoughts flashed through her mind. He actually has a wife and a peerless beauty? In order to reunite with his wife, He gave up his identity as the son of God and went to the Luo Shui God nation? At this moment, Yun Yao's figure involuntarily appeared in her mind. She actually envied Yun Yao. She envied her for having a husband who loved her so much and was willing to give up everything for her. After a long time, Ronger calmed down and her expression returned to normal. However, the last trace of hope in her heart was destroyed, and her eyes dimmed. Grandma Masteress, since we have already guessed that Mr.'s identity, we don't have to wait any longer, right? If there is nothing else, let's leave now. Grandma Jean glanced at her, and there was a trace of pity in her kind eyes. However, she only sighed silently and did not say anything. Jeyu patted Ronger's shoulder and comforted her. Ronger, fate has always been determined by the heavens. Some things can't be forced. Just treat him as a shooting star that flashed before your eyes. I understand. Ronger replied in low spirits. She lowered her head and didn't say anything else. Jeyu and Madame Jean both stared at the abyss and waited patiently. Not long after, a huge black figure flew out from the abyss. It was a huge black dragon with a very majestic appearance. On the broad back of the dragon stood a handsome young man in white robes. When Granny Jean and Jeyu saw the black dragon appear, their expressions changed and their pupils shrank. Black dragon? That's not right. The dragon we dealt with before was clearly a glazed fire dragon. Jeyu exclaimed in shock. Madame Jean quickly reminded him, this black dragon should be his original pet. It has nothing to do with the glazed fire dragon. Jeyu was even more shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. He already has a black dragon? Now that he had the glazed fire dragon, wouldn't he have 2 divine dragons? Even our divine Lord Tai Hao might not have 2 divine dragons, right? Madame Jean didn't answer. With a leap, she flew above the abyss and blocked Black Dragon's path. The black dragon was blocked and had to stop above the abyss. Ji Tianqing stood on the dragon's back and looked calmly at the person blocking his way. Seeing that the person blocking his way was Madame Jean, he couldn't help but frown and think to himself, as expected of a martial saint, she woke up so quickly. She seems to be waiting for me here. What does she want? Does she want to take back the glazed fire dragon? Thinking of this, he cupped his hands and bowed to Madame Jean and said expressionlessly, Senior, why are you stopping me? Madame Jean also cupped her hands and bowed to him and said calmly, I have been waiting for you for a long time. I am relieved to see you safe and sound. You don't have to worry. I have no evil intentions to stop you. I just want to ask you a question. I hope you can answer truthfully. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, Please ask. Madame Jean stared at him sharply and asked in a solemn tone, May I ask if your surname is Ji? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and looked at her solemnly, silently weighing his options. She actually guessed that my surname is Ji? Has she heard of my name or achievements? That shouldn't be the case. The Xinwu continent is so vast, and I am not as well known as the 3 martial gods, right? For a moment, he couldn't figure out Madame Jean's thoughts. Seeing that he was silent, Madame Jean revealed a kind smile and explained, Don't worry, young master. We are from the Tai Hao Divine Kingdom and came from an ancient sacred sect. We are one of the leaders of the Xian sect. Our sect has some connections with Mount God Bestowment and has interacted with several divine envoys, so we know a thing or two about Mount God Bestowment. Hearing her words, Ji Tianqing understood and nodded. So that's how it is. That's right. I am Ji Tianqing. After hearing his answer, Madame Jin's eyes flashed, and she immediately said to herself, It really is him. Jeyu was also somewhat excited and muttered to herself, No wonder he is so monstrous and can attract 9 heavenly tribulations and smoothly pass through them. It turns out that he is the continent's #1 genius. Only Ronger quietly lowered her head, not daring to look up at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing looked at Madame Jean and asked, I have answered Senior's question truthfully. Can Senior step aside? Madame Jean revealed a kind smile and hurriedly cupped her hands in greeting. This old one has been presumptuous. Please don't take offense, young Master Ji. Although young Master Ji has left the Divine Kingdom, Mount God Bestowment and the Tai Hao Divine Kingdom will always welcome you back. Ji Tianqing looked deeply at Madame Jean and nodded. If there is a chance in the future, I will return to the Tai Hao Divine Kingdom. Madame Jean had achieved her goal, so she revealed a satisfied smile and cupped her hands. This seat will not disturb you any further. Farewell, young Master Ji. Senior is too polite. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands in return before riding the black dragon into the sky and leaving at lightning speed. Madame Jean waited until the black dragon's figure disappeared into the horizon before withdrawing her gaze and leaving with Jie Yu and Ronger. After leaving the Mountain of Flames, Ji Tianqing sped through the divine ruins and rushed back to the Luo Shui divine kingdom. Qian Yu and the black dragon returned to the sword world and went into seclusion to cultivate, preparing to break through to the tribulation stage. Yun Yao, Ji Bai Shouhei, and the glazed fire dragon were all recuperating in the peaceful Earth City. After a full 50 days, Ji Tianqing returned to the Luoshan mountain covered in dust. After returning to the Cloud Water Palace, which he had been away from for a long time, he opened the sword world and let Yun Yao fly out. Yun Yao's injuries had healed long ago, and after more than a month of cultivation, her strength had steadily increased. The glazed fire dragon's injuries were no longer serious, but it still needed a few more years to recover its vitality. Thus, Yun Yao brought the glazed fire dragon into a secret room and used the immortal divine power to heal its injuries and quickly recover its vitality. Chapter 1809. Ji Tianqing was tired after traveling for more than a month. He reminded the golden dragon and black eagle before entering the secret room to meditate. After resting for 3 days, his mind power and magic power had recovered to their peak. Then, he took out a golden jade bottle from his spatial ring and observed it. This jade bottle was called the Glazed Bottle. It was a treasure that Hong Chengtian had given him. When Ji Tianqing found the remnant soul of the white dragon god in the ruins of God, he stored it in the glazed bottle and used many spirit stones and resources to nourish it. He knew that it would take more than 3 to 5 years to awaken the remnant soul of the white dragon god. Therefore, he did not check the situation of the remnant soul in the past half a year. Now that he took out the glazed bottle and carefully examined it, he found that the remnant soul of the white dragon god had changed. 90% of the cultivation resources he had put in the bottle had disappeared. There was not much left. The weak remnant soul seemed to have become stronger after absorbing a large amount of cultivation resources. The energy ripples of the remnant soul were not as weak as before. They had become very stable. However, he was still thousands of miles away from awakening and being reborn. Even so, Ji Tianqing's spirits were lifted and he felt gratified. The remnant soul of the white dragon god is indeed slowly becoming stronger. This means that my method is effective. He muttered to himself and took out a large amount of cultivation resources from his spatial ring and put them into the glazed bottle. According to his estimates, the cultivation resources he put in this time were enough for the remnant soul of the white dragon to absorb for a year. After dealing with this matter, he put away the glazed bottle and entered the sword world to check on the situation of peaceful Soil City. Previously, when he was digging for black gold copper in the Flame Mountain, he had captured Xitigarbha divine armor. That Xitigarbha divine armor was an ancient beast with the bloodline of a divine beast. Its attributes and effects were very compatible with the Earth Spirit race. Therefore, Ji Tianqing gave the Xitigarbha divine armor to the Earth Spirit race for the Golden Mountain King to deal with. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing's origin spirit entered the sword world and arrived at peaceful Soil City. After he entered the city lord's mansion, the guards hurriedly bowed and led him to the Jinshan King's study. Not long after, the Jinshan King hurried over. After bowing respectfully, the Jinshan King asked with a smile, "Sir, why have you come to Unta City today? Do you have any orders?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "I don't have any orders. I just want to ask, how are you guys handling the Xitigarbha divine armor?" The Jinshan King was overjoyed at the mention of the Xitigarbha godly armor. He quickly replied, "Young master, after you gave me the Xitigarbha godly armor, I gathered all the warriors of my tribe and built an altar to perform the blood spirit secret art. It took us 12 days and the blood and sweat of over 6,000 of our people to sign a contract with it, and make it the guardian beast of our clan. Now its injuries and strength have recovered, but it won't resist or harm us. It's been working hard, combing the terrain day and night, collecting gold and stones, and cultivating mineral veins." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing was relieved. He nodded and said, "That's good. The Xitigarbha godly armor is the overlord of this land. It's very likely to become a divine beast in the future. With it managing the land of this small world, I'll have less to worry about." The two chatted for a while more before the Jinshan King brought Ji Tianqing out of the city lord's mansion and flew to a mountain range hundreds of miles away. When they were still hundreds of miles away, Ji Tianqing saw that the mountain range was shaking, and there were rumbling sounds coming from underground. Without waiting for him to ask, the Jinshan king took the initiative to explain. Yesterday, the Xitigarbha godly armor reported to me that it thinks the terrain of this mountain range is not good. It's impossible to gather wind and water here, and it's also difficult to gather the power of gold and stone to form mineral veins. It's also impossible to become a land of spiritual veins. Therefore, it wants to sort out the direction and foundation of the mountain range and change the terrain, making it easier to form mineral veins. Ji Tianqing flew to the vicinity of the mountain range and released his divine sense to explore the underground. Sure enough, the huge black beast was dozens of miles deep underground. It was quickly moving the rock layers and soil, changing the terrain of the mountain range little by little. He observed for a while and saw that there was nothing wrong with the Xitigarbha godly armor. Then, he left with the Jinshan king. After returning to the city lord's mansion, Ji Tianqing was about to leave the sword world. However, at this moment, in the sky above a towering mountain range 800 miles away from the city, there was a sudden gust of wind and black clouds. Ji Tianqing and the Jinshan king sensed that something was wrong and hurried over. When they got closer, Ji Tianqing saw that the black clouds were forming a vortex, and there were flashes of lightning. He immediately frowned and said with a solemn face, "This is the tribulation cloud. Who's going to pass the tribulation?" As he said, he looked up at the mountain in front of him. At the top of the mountain, there stood a celestial fox, whose body was ice blue. It was Qian Yu. Qian Yu stood calmly at the top of the mountain, swaying its 12 giant tails gently, and looked up at the sky with shining eyes. A layer of hazy ice-blue brilliance enveloped its body, exuding a powerful and mysterious aura. Ji Tianqing quickly asked, "Qian Yu, how did your tribulation come so quickly?" When Qian Yu heard his voice, it quickly turned its head and replied, "He, of course, it's because of the divine stone of summoning moon." Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, "How's your preparation? Are you confident?" Qian Yu said without hesitation, "Of course, I'm confident. It's not the first time I'm going to pass the tribulation. Old Ji, when I reach the crossing calamity stage, the speed of refining the divine stone of summoning moon will be faster, and my strength will soar rapidly. You and Yunniao have to work harder. Don't let me surpass you, or you'll lose face." "Humph! How arrogant!" Ji Tianqing scolded. "Don't get carried away. Be careful. Don't make any mistakes." Yes, I know." Qian Yu nodded to show that it understood. After a while, a huge tribulation cloud vortex formed, and everything within 100 miles turned dark. In the dark vortex, the first heavenly thunder was formed. Kaboom! Along with the sound of thunder, a 500-foot-long blue thunderbolt struck down from the sky towards Qian Yu. Qian Yu was fearless in the face of the terrifying heavenly thunder. It raised its head and spat out an ice-blue light beam towards the heavenly thunder. Bam! In the loud noise, the heavenly thunder and the ice-blue light beam collided and collapsed at the same time. The first heavenly thunder was easily neutralized by Qian Yu. Then, the second and third heavenly thunder came one after another. Qian Yu imitated Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's method of tribulation, and used powerful attacks to resist the power of the heavenly thunder. Chapter 18:10. The commotion caused by Qian Yu's tribulation was so loud that it could be seen from a few thousand miles away. The people of Anyu City were alerted. Many Earth Spirit Race experts came to watch. Not long after, Black Dragon, who was in seclusion deep in the mountain range, and Ancestor Sanju also came to check on the situation. More than 30 experts stood behind Ji Tianqing, watching Qian Yu's tribulation with excitement. Qian Yu's strength was indeed powerful. It neutralized the first 3 bolts of lightning without any effort. However, it still couldn't be compared to Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. When the 4th bolt of lightning struck, it couldn't defeat it anymore. It could only use defensive methods. When the 5th bolt of lightning struck, it used all of its innate abilities to barely block it. When the 6th bolt of lightning struck, its defensive mystic arts were also useless. It could only neutralize 60% of the power. Without a doubt, it was heavily injured by the lightning. Its body was charred black with blood flowing out. Ji Tianqing thought that Qian Yu would have succeeded after the 6th bolt of lightning. However, he didn't expect that the tribulation cloud vortex would change and send down the 7th bolt of lightning. The 1,000-foot-long bolt of lightning struck, but it didn't make any loud noise. The blood-red lightning sealed Qianyu, making it unable to move. Its eyes were closed as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. Ji Tianqing knew that it was the inner demon tribulation. I didn't expect Qianyu to attract 7 bolts of lightning and the inner demon tribulation. It seems that the heavenly fox's bloodline talent is not inferior to the divine beast's. It will definitely reach the immortal state in the future. He murmured to himself, feeling worried for Qianyu. Black Dragon also looked at Qianyu with a serious expression. Ji Tianqing looked at it and said, "It's a good thing that Qianyu is going through the tribulation before you. It can help you gain some experience. You should be going through your tribulation soon. Watch carefully so that you can deal with it in the future." Black Dragon nodded and said in a low voice, "I understand the first 6 bolts of lightning. I'm confident that I can overcome them. The key is the 7th bolt of lightning. I can't figure it out. Old Ji, can you give me some advice?" Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said, "The 7th heavenly thunder is the inner demon tribulation, which can only be triggered by creatures with supreme aptitude. However, the inner demon tribulation was very mysterious and rare. It was untraceable and hard to grasp. Everyone's inner demon tribulation was different, so it was hard to provide useful experiences and solutions. However, there was one thing that was certain. The inner demon tribulation was born to target one's weakness and heart not. You have to remember that the inner demon tribulation doesn't test your strength and defense, but your soul and temperament. Those who are weak, indecisive, and have obvious flaws and weaknesses will find it difficult to resolve the inner demon tribulation." The Black Dragon listened attentively and enjoyed it. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. The blood-red brilliance that enveloped Qianyu finally dissipated, and the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky also gradually dissipated. Very clearly, Qianyu successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation and successfully passed the heavenly tribulation. It opened its eyes and revealed a confident smile. Then, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky turned into a ball of divine golden light and poured into its body. Under the baptism of the divine golden light, its injuries quickly healed, and its magic power also quickly recovered. Not only that, its body was also undergoing changes, and its strength was rapidly increasing. In just a short 100 breaths, its strength had increased by 5 times, and it naturally reached the first stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. The Black Dragon and Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes immediately cheered excitedly, feeling happy for Qianyu. Qianyu was like a general returning victorious, bathed in the joy and glory of victory, and came in front of everyone. Everyone congratulated it for successfully passing the tribulation. Ji Tianqing also reminded it to guard against arrogance and rashness, and to continue to cultivate diligently. Half an hour later, everyone dispersed. Qianyu returned to peaceful Earth City and continued to cultivate in seclusion. Ji Tianqing also left the Sword World, and his primordial spirit returned to its original position, meditating in the secret room. After a while, the Black Eagle's voice came from outside the secret room. "Young master, Granny Long is here to see you." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing got up and walked out of the secret room. When he entered the living room, Granny Long was sitting at the table drinking tea. Seeing him come, Granny Long put down the teacup and pretended to be angry. "Tianqing, you and Yunyao have been gone for a few months. Why didn't you say hello to this old woman when you came back? If it weren't for the guards who came to report the news, this old woman would still be in the dark." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "We were negligent. Please forgive us, Granny." Granny Long smiled and waved her hand. "Forget it. This old woman is not here to criticize you. This old woman is relieved that you have returned safely. By the way, did the 2 of you go to the Flaming Mountain this time? Did you see the glazed fire dragon?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "Although the trip to the Flaming Mountain this time was full of danger, we gained a lot. It was very successful." Then he roughly recounted the experience of the trip to the Flaming Mountain. After hearing this, Granny Long was very excited and happy. She said, "Good," 3 times. "That's great. The 2 of you can really create miracles. You actually managed to subdue the glazed fire dragon. Now that Yunyao has the reverse water divine sword and the glazed fire dragon, it can be said that she is like a tiger that has grown wings. She will definitely grow rapidly." After talking about this matter, Granny Long talked about another matter. "Tianqing, later tell Yunyao that half a year's time is up. Divine official Luo Li has also finished refining the holy elixir. She is currently on the way and will arrive at the Luotian mountain in 3 days. After her reminder, Ji Tianqing remembered that the time was indeed up. Okay, Granny. Don't worry, I will tell Yunyao to be ready. Granny Long said a few more words before getting up and leaving. 3 days passed quickly. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were ready and waiting in the Cloud Water Palace. As the sun rose from the east, an exquisite and beautiful flying boat landed on the peak of the Luotian mountain. Luo Li, who was dressed in luxurious clothes, walked out of the flying boat and went straight to the Cloud Water Palace. After Ji Tianqing and Yunyao greeted her, they led her into the living room. After the two of them sat down, Luo Li looked at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao with a surprised and shocked expression. I haven't seen you for half a year, but the two of you have already broken through to the tribulation stage? Luo Li could accept and believe that Yunyao had broken through to the tribulation stage. However, Ji Tianqing had also reached the tribulation stage. This made her feel incredulous and shocked. After a while she suppressed the shock in her heart and said, Yao Yao, fortunately I did not disappoint you. I have already refined the holy elixir to heal you. This time, I have brought it to you. However, before I take the medicine, I have to check your physical condition first. Okay, thank you. Yunyao smiled and nodded. Luo Li glanced at Ji Tianqing. She wanted to ask him to leave for a while like last time. However, she hesitated and did not say anything. She silently took out the medicine box and used a secret technique to check on Yunyao's condition. After a while, she suddenly detected that there was a life aura hidden in Yunyao's body. Chapter 18:11. The sudden exclamation shocked Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Both of them frowned and stared at Luo Li anxiously. Luo Li, what's wrong? Is there a problem? Divine official Luo, how's Yao Yao's condition? Luo Li's body stiffened as she stared at Yunyao. She was speechless for a moment. This accidental discovery also shocked her, causing her to feel a little flustered. At this moment, many thoughts flashed through her mind and intertwined with each other. But in the end, she took a few deep breaths and forced herself to calm down. It's nothing. Let me check again to be sure. Luo Li waved her hand with a complicated expression. She lowered her head and continued to cast the secret technique. She didn't dare to look at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's eyes. She was very nervous and was afraid that her eyes would reveal something. But her abnormal reaction just now had made Ji Tianqing and Yunyao suspicious. Both of them looked at her doubtfully and waited for her to give the final answer. This time, Luo Li was very serious and careful. But the result was still the same. There was indeed a life force in Yunyao's body. Although that life was still a little small and hadn't even grown up yet, it was real. But she was real, and her life aura was very strong and vigorous, containing a mysterious and extraordinary power. Luo Li was curious and wanted to check the little life's condition. But when her divine sense came into contact with the little life, it was bounced off. There was a layer of powerful and mysterious power that tightly wrapped around the little life, protecting and nurturing it. Luo Li could only retract her divine sense and stop casting the secret technique. Ji Tianqing was very worried about Yunyao's condition and couldn't wait to ask, Divine official Luo, how's Yao Yao's condition? Luo Li glanced at him and said calmly, The red fruit you gave me back then was very effective. I used the pill refined from the cinnabar fruit to stabilize Yao Yao's injuries. On top of that, Yao Yao had also assimilated a longevity divine pearl, greatly enhancing her life force and stabilizing her soul. Today, I've brought along a carefully refined panacea. As long as Yao Yao consumes it and recuperates for a month, the problem of her missing soul will be solved. As she spoke, Luo Li took out a small white jade bottle from her medicine box and placed it on the table beside her. Inside the exquisite and beautiful white jade bottle, there was a fiery red pill. It was the sacred medicine that she had painstakingly refined. Ji Tianqing looked at the white jade bottle, then looked at Luo Li and said in a serious tone, Divine official Luo, other than this, do you have anything else to say? Your expression changed greatly just now. What's going on? Is something wrong with Yao Yao's body? Luo Li furrowed her brows and remained silent as she weighed the pros and cons in her heart. Judging from Yunyao and Ji Tianqing's reactions, they probably don't know about it yet. However, I lost my composure just now and aroused their suspicions. This matter can't be kept a secret. As long as they investigate carefully, they will definitely find out. As she thought of this, Luoli had an idea. She looked up at Ji Tianqing and said calmly, I have a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked at each other and asked, What's the good news? What's the bad news? Luoli squeezed out a smile and said, The good news is, congratulations on becoming a father. What? Ji Tianqing's body shook and his eyes widened in surprise. I'm a father? You mean, Yao Yao is pregnant with my child? He muttered in disbelief and slowly turned his head to look at Yun Yao's abdomen. Yun Yao's figure hadn't changed and her abdomen was still as flat as before. However, he seemed to see that there was a cute little life in Yun Yao's abdomen. Yun Yao was also stunned. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand and didn't let out a cry of surprise. After she came back to her senses, she was also surprised and looked down at her abdomen. At this moment, she suddenly recalled all the strange reactions she had before and finally understood. No wonder I had a strange reaction when I was cultivating in seclusion. No wonder there was a mysterious force that helped me block most of the power of the heavenly thunder when I was going through the heavenly tribulation. It turns out that I was pregnant with Tianqing's child. Our child. Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were the same. They were both immersed in great joy and were quite excited. If Luoli hadn't pointed it out, they wouldn't have thought about it and wouldn't have thought that a little life was about to be born. However, Ji Tianqing calmed down quickly. He stopped smiling and looked at Luoli with a frown. He asked, Divine Official Luo, what's the bad news? Luoli sighed with a serious expression and said in a low voice, The two of you are about to have a child. This is a joyous matter. However, the problem of Yao Yao's missing soul hasn't been solved yet. She's still in a dangerous situation. However, this little life came at this time. It's very dangerous for the mother and child. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with worry. Yun Yao was anxious and asked, Luoli, didn't you bring the holy medicine? I'll be fine after I take it. Luoli shook her head. Even if you take the holy medicine, it can only stabilize your soul temporarily. It can't cure it completely. If you want to solve this problem completely, you have to gather your 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. Moreover, the little life in your body is very unusual. I'm afraid it's not an ordinary life. In your current state, giving birth to such a life will put you in an even more dangerous situation. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and asked in a low voice, Divine Official Luo, what's going on? Is there something wrong with our child? Luoli didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, Half a year ago, when I was treating Yao Yao's injuries, I asked the two of you to stay in separate rooms. Did you do that in the past half a year? It was not convenient for Ji Tianqing to discuss such an awkward question. Only Yun Yao could answer it. She nodded and said in a calm tone, Of course I did it. Luo Li's eyes flashed and she said in a serious tone, That means the two of you slept together half a year ago and got pregnant at that time. However, half a year has passed and Yun Yao's body hasn't changed much. Your child has just grown. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were enlightened. Under normal circumstances, the human race will give birth after 10 months. However, our child hasn't shown any signs of movement for half a year. Luoli nodded and said in a serious tone, Therefore, your child is extraordinary and needs a long time to be born. Chapter 18:12. Everyone knew that martial arts powerhouses had a harder time giving birth to children than ordinary people. However, the children of powerful martial arts powerhouses were bound to be extraordinary. Whether it was bloodline inheritance, spiritual power, or innate talent, they all far surpassed ordinary people. Most importantly, many powerhouses with extraordinary innate talent had a very long process of giving birth to children. In the martial arts world, there were all sorts of bizarre legends. For example, there was a certain martial saint from 8,000 years ago who was the sage emperor of a certain empire. His sage empress was a descendant of an ancient noble family and had a special bloodline. Her strength had also reached the martial saint realm. The two martial saints had been married for hundreds of years, but they had not given birth to any children. It was not until 1,000 years later that the sage empress finally became pregnant, but it took her 9 years to give birth. The child that was born after 9 years had been born with the bloodline and spiritual power of his parents, and his innate talent was even more monstrous than his parents. In just a dozen years, the child had reached the primordial spirit realm. 50 years later, he had become a tribulation stage powerhouse. Then, in just 100 years, he had become a martial saint powerhouse, and his name had shaken the entire Xueqi continent. There were many similar stories that would appear every few hundred years. However, only that powerhouse who had become a martial saint in 100 years had been hailed as a peerless genius that had not appeared in 3,000 years. His legendary deeds were still being spread throughout the Xueqi continent. Another example was that in ancient times, there had been an ancient and powerful clan called the Heavenly Spirit Clan. The spiritual leaders of the Heavenly Spirit Clan had been 2 heavenly spirit gods. The 2 deities were a man and a woman. They had become husband and wife and ruled the entire clan together. They had been together for 3,000 years, and it had not been easy for them to give birth to a divine child. That divine child had been in his mother's womb for 18 years before he was born. However, he had been a prodigy from birth. Not only did he possess extraordinary strength, but he also possessed extraordinary intellect. When the prodigy was 6 years old, he had already become a martial saint. He was the youngest martial saint in the history of the martial world. It was a pity that the 2 heavenly spirit gods had died in battle during the ancient War of the Gods. The prodigy who had become a martial saint at the age of 6 had also died prematurely. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had heard of similar legends and read about them in some ancient books. Therefore, the 2 of them did not panic or worry. Instead, they were pleasantly surprised. Both of us have unparalleled talent. When our child is born in the future, he will definitely be more outstanding than us. With our current strength, it's very difficult to conceive a child. Fortunately, the heavens have blessed us and given us this great surprise. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stared at each other, their hearts filled with joy and anticipation. Luoli hesitated for a moment before replying with a calm expression. Although this is a joyous occasion, your children will definitely not be ordinary. However, I have to remind you that Yao Yao's condition is different from ordinary people. She is not suitable to have this child. If anything happened, not only would the child be lost, even Yao Yao would lose her life. So, for the sake of Yao Yao's safety, I suggest you. Without waiting for Luoli to finish her words, Yun Yao interrupted her and said in a firm tone, "No. No matter how dangerous it is, I will never give up on this child. Which mother would give up on her child? Moreover, this is a treasure that the heavens have bestowed upon me and Tianqing." Luoli sighed helplessly. She knew that once she had made up her mind, she would not change it easily. Therefore, she stopped persuading Yun Yao and turned to Ji Tianqing. She asked, "Ji Tianqing, what's your decision?" Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said solemnly, "I have the same thoughts as Yao Yao. This child was not easy to come by. It is the fruit of our hard work. We will not give it up. Even if Yao Yao is pregnant with this child, there will be some accidents and dangers. We will face them correctly and try to resolve the danger." Luoli frowned. She wanted to persuade them again, but she found it difficult to speak. In the end, she could only remain silent and sigh in her heart. Sigh. Yao Yao is pregnant now, and only the 3 of us know about this. In the future, if Yao Yao shows signs of pregnancy or the child is born, this matter will definitely not be able to be hidden. If the people of the kingdom of God knew that the holy goddess, the future god, had already gotten married and had a child, I wonder how big of a storm it would cause? Luoli was worried when she thought of this. She was worried about the future of the kingdom of God and Yun Yao's reputation. After a long time, Luoli suppressed her chaotic thoughts and said to Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, "I have already told you about the pros and cons of this matter. Since you both insist on giving birth to this child, no one can force you. However, you must remember to let Yao Yao rest peacefully and not put yourself in danger. In addition, if Yao Yao's body has any abnormalities, you must inform me immediately. I will find a way to help you." After speaking, Luoli took out 2 jade slips and placed them on the table. Then, she took the medicine box and left. Yun Yao took the 2 jade slips and asked the Black Eagle to send Luoli out. Only Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were left in the room, and it suddenly became quiet. Ji Tianqing walked to Yun Yao and held her hands. He looked at her gently and said in a sincere tone, "Yao Yao, thank you. I have made you suffer." Yun Yao shook her head gently and said with a smile, Tianqing, don't thank me. This is our luck and my blessing. My biggest wish is to marry you and grow old hand in hand. Then, I will give birth to a pair of children for you. Only then will I be happy. Now that God has blessed me, I have already fulfilled half of my wish. I am very satisfied. Ji Tianqing took her into his arms and said in a firm tone, No matter what danger or difficulty there is, I will never back down. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will protect you and your children. Yun Yao shook her head again and said in a solemn tone, No, we will never let anything happen to you. 3 people is a family. We will always be together. Ji Tianqing nodded and held her tightly in his arms. He used his heart to feel her heartbeat and the little life in her belly. What was incredible was that the little life that hadn't taken shape yet emitted a slight aura fluctuation and gently touched Ji Tianqing's body. That feeling was like a curious baby greeting him. After Luo Li left Yun Yao's place, she stayed in another courtyard of the Cloud Water Palace. She waved her hand and asked the 2 maids to leave. Then, she sat alone in front of the white jade table with a worried face. She rubbed her eyebrows painfully and sighed to herself. Sigh. Yao Yao, oh Yao Yao, you are really good at giving me problems. How am I going to report and explain to the Divine Master after such a big thing happened? The future master of the Luo Water God Kingdom, the noble goddess Yaoguang, is marrying an ordinary man. This is shocking enough. Chapter 18:13. Luo Li smiled bitterly as she felt a headache coming on. However, no matter how difficult it was for her, as a divine official, she had to fulfill her duty and carry out her mission. After a long while, she took out a gourd-sized diamond-shaped gem from her spatial ring and placed it on the jade table in front of her. Then, she used her hands to cast a spell and activated the array of the diamond-shaped gem. Suddenly, the gem lit up with a dazzling white light and formed a light screen in the air. The light screen was like a mirror, and an ice-blue figure appeared in it. It was a young woman with a graceful figure and graceful bearing. She wore an ice-blue dress, and her entire body emanated a sacred and noble aura. Although she looked like she was in her 20s, her eyes were clear and bright. However, she had a pair of eyes that were as clear as water and as deep as the sea of stars. They contained wisdom that could see through everything. Luo Li stood respectfully in front of the light screen and looked at the blue-dressed woman with reverence. Then she bowed. Greetings, Divine Master. The blue-dressed woman in the light screen nodded and asked in a calm and gentle voice, Luo Li, have you seen Yun Yao? That's right. Luo Li respectfully nodded her head. The blue-dressed woman raised her eyebrows and asked, Has she taken the holy medicine? How is it? Luo Li reported truthfully, I have given her the holy medicine. She should take it soon. Divine Master, I have checked Yun Yao's body and found something unusual. The blue-dressed woman frowned and asked, What's unusual? Yun Yao. Luo Li hesitated for a moment, then lowered her head and said, She is pregnant with Ji Tianqing's child. What? The blue-dressed woman's face changed and she frowned. Her eyes dimmed. The blue-dressed woman was silent, and Luo Li lowered her head respectfully. She didn't dare to say anything. After a long while, the blue-dressed woman sighed and said faintly, He actually, sigh. Luo Li's body shook. She thought that the Divine Master was disappointed with Yun Yao, so she quickly explained, Divine Master, this was an accident. If I hadn't checked it, they wouldn't have known. You can't blame Yun Yao for this. If the Almighty wants to punish someone, you can only blame Ji Tianqing. The blue-dressed woman's expression returned to normal. She said expressionlessly, They are husband and wife. It is natural for them to have a child. How can you blame them? Luo Li said without hesitation, But Yun Yao is the future Divine Master, the incomparably noble goddess Yaoguang. Ji Tianqing was just a mortal, but he was able to marry Yun Yao and have a son. This was the fortune that he had accumulated over several lifetimes. Even if he has extraordinary talent and is known as the #1 genius of the continent, he is still a mortal after all. How can he be worthy of Yun Yao? It was obvious that Luo Li was very protective of Yun Yao. In order to prevent the Divine Master from venting his anger on Yun Yao, she pushed all the blame onto Ji Tianqing. Moreover, in her heart, Ji Tianqing was not worthy of Yun Yao. When the blue-dressed woman heard this, her expression became a little strange. She looked at Luo Li with sparkling eyes. Luo Li, don't say such things again. Don't look down on Ji Tianqing. Luo Li nodded quickly and said, I understand. Even if Ji Tianqing is married to Yun Yao, he is still Yun Yao's husband. In order to take care of Yun Yao's feelings, I will not show. Before she could finish, the blue-dressed woman shook her head gently and interrupted her. No, you still don't understand what I mean. Heaven has its own destiny. Marriage and reincarnation are all traceable. Ji Tianqing can marry Yun Yao and have a child. That is their destiny. Moreover, he is not as simple as you think. His status is enough to be worthy of Yun Yao. Ah! Luo Li was stunned on the spot. She widened her eyes in disbelief and stared at the blue-dressed woman on the screen. Yun Yao is the reincarnation of a goddess. How can he be worthy of Yun Yao's status? How is this possible? Luo Li was so shocked that she lost her composure on the spot. She could not imagine that the ordinary person in her eyes had such a shocking status. She also could not understand. Who was Ji Tianqing? How could he be worthy of Yun Yao, the reincarnation of a deity king? Unfortunately, the blue-dressed woman did not say much, nor did she explain Ji Tianqing's identity. Luo Li, let nature take its course. You have to remind Yun Yao to take care of her body. Nothing must happen to her. Also, after you have settled the matters at Luotian Mountain, come back to the God's kingdom. I have other tasks for you. Luo Li bowed quickly and said, Luo Li understands. Goodbye, deity. When she finished speaking, the blue-dressed woman's figure on the screen started to fade. After a while, the blue-dressed woman's figure disappeared, and the screen dissipated quickly. Luo Li stood on the spot and was stunned for a long time. Then, she calmed down and put away the diamond-shaped gem. When night fell, in the Cloud Water Palace, in a luxurious and spacious room, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao sat opposite each other. There was a small white jade bottle on the jade table between the two of them. It contained the holy elixir. Ji Tianqing looked at Yun Yao and said, Yao Yao, now that everything is done, you can rest in the palace and give birth to our child. Take the holy elixir as soon as possible and go into seclusion in the secret room to refine the elixir. Also, the glazed fire dragon's injuries have recovered by 80%. After you are done with your seclusion, you can cultivate with it. It will strengthen your tacit understanding, and it will be beneficial to you. Yun Yao nodded and took the small white jade bottle. She said, Since nothing has happened recently, I will take the holy elixir and go into seclusion in the secret room. As for Granny Long and Luo Li, you can tell them that you can take care of anything. After the two of them finished their discussion, Yun Yao entered the secret room to take the holy elixir and cultivate in seclusion. Ji Tianqing also returned to his secret room to meditate and cultivate. The next few days were very peaceful on Luotian Mountain. 3 days later, Luo Li completed her task and bid farewell to Ji Tianqing and Granny Long. She then left the Cloud Water Palace and returned to the Kingdom of God. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that Luo Li's attitude towards him was much gentler. Not long after Luo Li left, a guard came to the Cloud Water Palace and reported to Ji Tianqing that Granny Long wanted to see him. Thus, Ji Tianqing left the Cloud Water Palace and rushed to Granny Long's residence. Ji Tianqing met Granny Long in a simple and elegant study room. Granny Long was sitting in front of the desk with a pile of letters and memorials in front of her. Her white hair was denser and her expression was full of worry. She was obviously in a very heavy mood. After Ji Tianqing entered the study room, he cupped his fists and saluted Granny Long and asked, Is there anything I can help you with, Granny Long? Granny Long pointed to the chair next to her and said with a kind expression, Tianqing, sit down and talk. I didn't summon you here to give you a task, but to tell you a lot of news. I want to discuss it with you and help this old woman make a decision. Chapter 18:14. Granny Long nodded. That's right. In recent months, the situation in Scandinavia has become even more difficult. When Ji Tianqing heard this, he vaguely guessed the reason. Could it be that the demons of North Underworld Mountain are making a move again? Granny Long nodded again and said in a low voice, Yes, as you guessed, the demons of North Underworld Mountain have become even more rampant. North Underworld Mountain has sent a large number of demon powerhouses to madly infiltrate the northern border of Scandinavia and wreak havoc there. Those demon powerhouses have wantonly assassinated the generals of the border and destroyed the border cities. They have coordinated from the inside and the outside, allowing a large number of demon troops to sneak into Scandinavia and wantonly slaughter the people at the border. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and his expression and eyes became gloomy. Damned demons! How dare they so brazenly invade Luoshui Scandinavia? Granny Long nodded slightly and said in a resentful tone, "According to the information we received, your previous conjecture is completely correct. North Underworld Mountain has been accumulating strength for thousands of years and has accumulated a strong foundation and strength. They have long been ambitious. Moreover, in recent years, North Underworld Mountain has a new leader, and many powerhouses and forces have united, so they can't wait to invade. In just a few months, dozens of cities at the northern border have been destroyed, hundreds of generals and powerhouses have been assassinated, and tens of millions of people have been massacred. Now the northern border has been plunged into chaos and slaughter, and countless people have lost their homes. Everyone is in a state of panic." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "Doesn't Scandinavia have the corresponding countermeasures? Haven't they taken any action?" "Of course they have." Granny Long quickly shook her head and explained, "Since the border was attacked, I have sent a few divine envoys to the major empires. In these few months, the major empires have conscripted armies to the border to resist the demon invasion. However, the northern border is vast, and the defense line is too long, so it is difficult to make it watertight. The demon powerhouses are very sinister and cunning, and they can use all kinds of schemes and tricks to infiltrate the border defense line and sneak into Scandinavia." At this point, Granny Long sighed helplessly. The demon race's methods are hard to guard against, and the armies of the various countries are unfamiliar with the demon race, so they don't know how to deal with them. Over the past 4 months, the armies of the various countries had also suffered heavy casualties. Many experts and generals had even lost their lives. When the Divine Master received the news, he sent 2 of his most trusted experts to North Underworld Mountain to investigate the situation. Unfortunately, after the 2 martial saints entered the North Underworld Mountain, they were soon exposed, and the information obtained is also very limited. Ji Tianqing immediately understood that the news about the unification of the North Underworld Mountain that Granny Long had mentioned was most likely obtained by the 2 martial saints. He frowned and thought for a moment, then said in a solemn tone, "Granny, since the war at the border is urgent and everyone is helpless against the demons, then let me go to the border to provide support. Inform the generals of the other empires as soon as possible, and ask them to cooperate with me. I'm confident that I'll be able to unravel the evil race's scheme very soon." Hearing him say this, Granny Long suddenly showed a bitter smile and quickly shook her head. "Sigh. This old woman had already guessed that you would take the initiative to volunteer after hearing the news. But this old woman will never allow you to go to the border and personally participate in this war. You are the #1 genius of the continent, the #1 God's disciple of Luotian Mountain, and also Yun Yao's husband. No matter what, this old woman can't let you take the risk, otherwise, I won't be able to answer to Yun Yao and the Divine Master." Ji Tianqing frowned and said, "But I know the demons very well, perhaps only I can resolve this crisis." Granny Long quickly nodded and said, "That's right, this old woman believes that you have this ability, so I summoned you to discuss this matter. But no matter what, this old woman can't send you to the border to participate in the war." Ji Tianqing was suddenly in a dilemma. After a moment of silent consideration, he made up his mind and said, "If that's the case, then I can only use other methods to help Scandinavia resolve this crisis." Granny Long's eyes became bright, revealing a look of deep expectation. "What method do you have?" Ji Tianqing said in a serious tone, "I know the demons very well. Later I will record all the information and secrets about the demons in a jade slip and give it to you. For example, the bloodline of the demons, their special talents and divine abilities, their usual tricks and secret techniques, and how to prevent and resist the demons." After hearing this, Granny Long's spirit was suddenly lifted, and she quickly nodded and said, "Good. This is a very good method. We don't need to send you to the border to participate in the war, and we can resolve the demons' conspiracy as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time, and quickly took out a jade slip, and used his divine sense to input the information in it. He listed all the secrets he knew, and all kinds of information about the demons, and recorded them in the jade slip. After a full hour, he finished recording all the relevant information. Although the information was more than 20,000 words, he listed it clearly, and understood it at a glance. After finishing, Ji Tianqing handed the jade slip to Granny Long and said in a serious tone, "Granny, this is all the information I have, and recorded more than 100 methods to deal with the demons. This record, we will temporarily call it the Demon Resisting Record. I hope you can distribute this record to the generals of the various countries, so that the soldiers can understand the situation as soon as possible. If we want to resist the demons' invasion and destroy their conspiracy, we can't just rely on a few experts, we must have a united will, and 10,000 hearts. Granny Long took the jade slip with a solemn expression and put it away. Then she said in a serious tone, Demon Resisting Records, a very good name. This old woman will send it to the army as soon as possible so that the 3 armies can read it. In addition, this old woman thanks you on behalf of the Divine Lord and all the people of the Divine Kingdom for your generosity. You can selflessly publish the secrets and information you know. This is the honor of the Divine Kingdom's people, and the Luo River Divine Kingdom will always remember your kindness. After saying this, Granny Long stood up, and solemnly bowed to Ji Tianqing to express her gratitude. Ji Tianqing quickly reached out to support her, and said in a sincere tone, Granny, you don't have to thank me, please get up. Now that I am the #1 God's disciple of the Luo River Divine Kingdom, helping the Divine Kingdom to resist the demons is my duty. What's more, I have an irreconcilable hatred with the demons. Even if they don't invade the Divine Kingdom, I will find a way to destroy them. Although he said this, Granny Long was still very grateful, and was very touched. After a while, the two of them reached an agreement on the matter of the demons in the North Underworld Mountain. Granny Long brought up another big matter, and said with a worried expression, if it was only the demons in the North Underworld Mountain, this old woman wouldn't be so worried. The most hateful thing is that the Heaven's End Divine Kingdom also took this opportunity to make trouble, and is causing chaos in the northwest border. Chapter 18:15. Heaven's End God Nation? What's going on? Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Grandma Long also frowned and said in a serious tone, the source of the dispute started a few months ago when the envoy came to visit. At that time, the Heaven's End Mountain sent Bai Qing to visit and sent a gift, wanting to borrow the reverse water divine sword. We rejected Bai Qing, and you beat up the disciple Bai Qing brought. This matter humiliated the Heaven's End Mountain and made them very angry. Therefore, the Heaven's End God Nation used this matter as an excuse to start a conspiracy at the border between the two countries. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing sneered and said in a contemptuous tone, the Heaven's End God Nation sent an envoy to visit, but they only sent 2 insignificant people. They sent a piece of refining material and wanted to borrow the reverse water divine sword. Isn't this wishful thinking? At that time, I suspected that the Heaven's End God Nation had ulterior motives. Now it seems that it's true. They must have guessed that Bai Qing would be rejected, so they used this as an excuse to take revenge. Grandma Long nodded in agreement and said in a low voice, yes. The Heaven's End God Nation spread this matter and exaggerated it, making us look extremely arrogant and domineering. They said that the Luo River God Nation disregarded the friendship between the two countries and did such a thing to humiliate the Heaven's End God Nation, trampling on the dignity of the Heaven's End God Nation. Since the Luo River God Nation hates the Heaven's End God Nation so much, they won't talk about alliance and will definitely take back the territory they ceded. Ceded the territory? Ji Tianqing frowned and said in a resentful tone, could it be that the Heaven's End God Nation also sent an army to attack the border and invade the territory of the God Nation? Grandma Long shook her head and said, not yet, but the Heaven's End God Nation has shown signs that they might do so in the future. The main conflict now is centered on the few resources at the border. Those resources are located at the border between the two countries and there was a dispute before. Later, after the 2 God Lords discussed, the 2 sides reached an agreement to divide and rule. Now, the Tianju Divine Nation wants to break the agreement and take back all the resources that belong to our country. Ha ha ha, what a shameless act of banditry. Ji Tianqing suddenly sneered, his face full of disdain. Granny Long continued, the place with the most intense conflict is the largest mine in the country, the Sunset Divine Mine. The Divine Mine was also located at the western border, at the border between the two countries. That was the largest mineral vein in the country. Every year, it could produce a huge amount of gems and ores to supply the cultivation needs of the God Kingdom. However, the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation came with great momentum and wantonly annexed the Sunset Divine Mine, wanting to take the entire Divine Mine away. After the incident, the generals guarding the Divine Mine resisted with all their might and even mobilized a few armies to support them. Only then were they able to stop the invasion of the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. However, the people of the Heaven End Divine Nation were shameless enough. On the surface, they occupied the mine and refused to return it. In the dark, they even sent out experts to use divine abilities and secret techniques to secretly steal the resources of the mine. The loss of the Sunset Divine Mine was so great that it had alarmed the Divine Master. The Divine Master ordered me to help Saint Emperor Chongyun to take back the lost land and guard the Sunset Divine Mine. After listening to Granny Long's explanation, Ji Tianqing realized that the situation was so serious. The bastards of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation are indeed ambitious. Not only did they snatch the few precious resources, they even dared to touch the Sunset Divine Mine. The Sunset Divine Mine is the lifeline of the God Kingdom. Once it is lost, the cultivation resources supplied to the God Kingdom will be sharply reduced by 60%. It will be a great blow to the God Kingdom. He asked in a low voice. Granny Long, the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation invaded with such great fanfare. Didn't Saint Emperor Chongyun, who was guarding the Divine Mine, lead the army to counterattack? Granny Long shook her head and said with a helpless expression, ever since the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation's invasion was stopped, they stopped the invasion on the surface and only stole resources in the dark. The two armies cannot really fight, otherwise, the flames of war will spread to the point of no return. There is an agreement between the three God Kingdoms that they will never fight or annex each other. This is to prevent the other races from taking advantage of the situation. Moreover, both sides have martial saint experts. Once the war starts, it will destroy the heaven and earth. The consequences will be unimaginable. Moreover, the northern border of the God Kingdom is being invaded by the demon race. It is impossible to fight with the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. Ji Tianqing was startled and said coldly, if we can't fight, how can we solve it? Are we going to let the bastards of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation steal the resources of the Divine Mine? Or, should we be like the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation and plot in the dark and launch a counterattack? Granny Long nodded and said with burning eyes, the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation is too much. How can we swallow this insult and let them do as they wish? I have thought for a long time, and after discussing with Saint Emperor Chongyun, I feel that there is only one way. Like you said, we will secretly plot in the dark and return an eye for an eye. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said in a joking tone, I understand. The two God Kingdoms can only fight in the dark and can't fall out openly. Granny Long nodded and said, that's right, that's what I mean. The Divine Lords can't show up, the martial sages can't take action, and even the God envoys of the Luotian Mountain can't participate in the operation. We can only send out ordinary experts and launch a counterattack in the dark. But what gives me a headache is that our tribulation-passing experts are far inferior to the other side. The plan to counterattack in the dark has been going on for more than half a month, but the results are minimal. The experts of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation are still stealing resources, and the Sunset Divine Mine is losing ore veins every day. Ji Tianqing said decisively, Granny Long, I can listen to your opinion and not go to the northern border to resist the demon race. But I have decided to go to the Sunset Divine Mine to resist the invasion of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation and destroy their conspiracy. Although the matter of Bai Qing's visit was a conspiracy of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation, it was caused by me. But this matter started because of me, so I can't stay out of it. Granny Long looked at him with burning eyes and asked, Tianqing, you are the #1 God disciple of the God Kingdom and the #1 genius in the world. I am worried that the people of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation will recognize you. If they secretly plot against you, we can't bear such a great loss. To tell you the truth, in the eyes of the Divine Lord, you are more important than the entire Sunset Divine Mine. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He murmured in his heart, Luo Xueqi has such an evaluation of me? Could it be that she has seen through my identity? Luo Xueqi, I owe you a favor and I haven't paid it back in my previous life. I will continue to pay it back in this life. Thinking of this, he made up his mind and said with certainty, Granny Long, don't worry. If the people of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation don't recognize me, it will be convenient for me to take action. If they recognized my identity, they would be even more cautious and would not dare to make a move against me. Chapter 18:16. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Granny Long fell silent. She frowned and pondered for a long time before making up her mind. Tianqing, what you say makes sense. I'll agree to it then. I hope that after you go to the Sunset Divine Mine, you can resolve the Heaven End Divine Nation scheme and recover the lost land. But you must remember, no matter what, you must prioritize your own safety and never take risks alone. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, I understand. Granny Long then took out a token and a jade slip from her spatial ring and handed them to him. This token is my keepsake. Use it to find Divine Emperor Long Yun. He will know what to do. As for this jade slip, it contains a detailed map of the Sunset Divine Mine, as well as the personnel deployment and arrangements, so that you can grasp the situation of the Divine Mine as soon as possible. Ji Tianqing accepted the token and the jade slip, then cupped his hands and said, This matter should not be delayed, then I will take my leave. I will go back and prepare. Then I will set off for the Sunset Divine Mine. Be careful, I will wait for your triumphant return. Granny Long stood up and sent him off. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and turned to leave the study. After returning to the Cloud Water Palace, he left a letter for Yun Yao and handed it to Black Eagle for safekeeping. After making his preparations, he quickly left the Luotian mountain. Even though he was flying alone in the sky, he was rushing towards the western border. But in reality, Zhi Bai, Xueqi, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon were all following him. They were just staying in the sword world to cultivate. Ji Tianqing flew with the wind and did not ride Black Dragon. Black Dragon had been cultivating in seclusion recently, and would undergo tribulation in about a month. Luotian Mountain was at the center of the Luotian Divine Nation, far from the western border. For ordinary people, even if they flew day and night, it would still take 3 to 5 months. After Ji Tianqing broke through to the tribulation passing realm, his cultivation had increased by leaps and bounds. Even his flying speed had increased by several times. He estimated that he would arrive in about 20 days. Along the way, he had to pass through the territories of 2 empires, but they were all Luotian Divine Nation's territories, so he was safe. He flew continuously for 22 days and was about to reach the western border. During this time, he did not encounter any trouble. There was only one more day before they arrived at the Sunset Divine Mine. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was flying above a vast primitive forest. Under the dark green sea of trees was an ancient mountain range that stretched on endlessly. The mountains were majestic and imposing. This place was close to the border and was a remote and desolate place. There were no major cities within 1,000,000 miles of this place, so there were very few martial artists here. Therefore, this place had become a paradise for many ferocious demonic beasts. Ji Tianqing flew over the mountain range and heard the cries of apes and the roars of beasts. He even saw many rare giant beasts. When the sun was setting, he suddenly sensed a violent hurricane blowing around him. In the sky above his head, boundless gray clouds gathered from all directions, covering the afterglow of the setting sun. As he flew forward, the gray clouds and hurricanes that filled the sky also moved quickly. Such a phenomenon caused Ji Tianqing to reveal a puzzled expression, and he stopped in his tracks. That's strange. Judging from this biting cold hurricane and the gray clouds, it seems like the heavenly tribulation is about to arrive. But my second heavenly tribulation hasn't arrived yet. Who's about to undergo it? Just as he was feeling puzzled, Qian Yu's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Old Ji, come and take a look. The little black dragon is about to undergo its tribulation. Ji Tianqing was startled and frowned. As expected, the little black dragon is about to undergo its tribulation. But it's in the sword world. How can the heavenly tribulation form outside? Puzzled, he hurriedly entered the sword world and landed in peaceful Earth City. In the spacious plaza of the city, the 3,000-foot-long black dragon was coiled up. Its body flickered with black light as it did its best to resist an invisible suppressive energy. Qian Yu, Zhi Bai, Xueqi, the Golden Mountain King, and several hundred Earth Spirit experts were gathered around the plaza, discussing spiritedly. What was surprising was that the little black dragon was about to undergo its tribulation, but the sky above peaceful Earth City was still bright and sunny. Seeing Ji Tianqing arrive, everyone bowed and greeted him. Qian Yu hurriedly came over and anxiously said, Old Ji, the little black dragon situation is very strange. Quickly come and take a look. Ji Tianqing hurriedly landed in the plaza and came to the little black dragon's side. He asked, Little black dragon, what's going on? Are you sure the heavenly tribulation is coming? The little black dragon was enduring an enormous suppressive energy and found it difficult to move. Even raising its head was extremely difficult. It said in a low voice, "Oh gee, I also don't know what's going on. I have a feeling that the heavenly tribulation will descend today. Now that the heavenly tribulation has arrived, I am being suppressed by the vast heavenly might, but there are no tribulation clouds in the sky. How strange." Ji Tianqing frowned and said in a serious tone, "Your calamity cloud is in the outside world. You can't undergo your tribulation here, or else something big will happen. I'll take you outside." As he spoke, he hurriedly opened the sword world and used the power of the sacred sword to move the little black dragon to the outside world. Whoosh! With a flash of black light, the little black dragon appeared above the vast forest. But before it could stand firm, an invisible heavenly might descended from the sky and immediately suppressed it. Thump! It fell from the sky and smashed into the summit of a 10,000-foot-tall mountain with a dull thud. A deep pit was smashed into the summit and thousands of towering trees were smashed to pieces, sending mud and wood splinters into the air. At the same time, the fierce winds in the world became even more violent. The boundless gray clouds in the sky began to rapidly converge, transforming into pitch-black tribulation clouds. The little black dragon crawled out of the pit with great difficulty. It had just assumed a defensive posture when a vortex of tribulation clouds formed in the sky, millions of arcs of lightning flashing within. In just a few seconds, the vortex of tribulation clouds in a radius of 100 li condensed a terrifying bolt of heavenly lightning that came crashing down. Kaboom! With a crack of thunder, a 1,000-foot-long bolt of heavenly lightning viciously slammed down at the little black dragon. The first bolt of heavenly lightning descended just like that. To Ji Tianqing's shock, this bolt of heavenly lightning was not only 1,000 foot long, it was also formed from gold and red lightning. Its power was extremely terrifying. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a trace of worry flashed through his eyes. Why is the little black dragon's heavenly tribulation so strange? Not only does it form tribulation clouds quickly, it also condenses heavenly lightning quickly. Its first bolt of heavenly lightning was 1,000 foot long, and it was formed from two types of lightning. It was several times stronger than Qianyue's tribulation. As this thought flashed through his mind, the two-colored bolt of heavenly lightning struck the little black dragon. Golden and red light blossomed, illuminating the gloomy sky for several hundred li in a dazzling light. The 10,000-foot-tall mountain beneath the little black dragon was instantly pulverized by the bolt of heavenly lightning, transforming it into scorched ruins. Dust rose into the air as the surrounding forest was set ablaze. Chapter 1817. Fortunately, the little black dragon had made ample preparations and had a robust foundation. It had not been injured by the heavenly lightning, but its aura had been thrown into disarray and its magic energy was fiercely fluctuating. Ji Tianqing stood in the air above the forest 100 li away. He stared at the little black dragon in the ruins and hurriedly sent a message to it. "Little black dragon, you can't relax. Focus and welcome the second bolt of heavenly lightning." The little black dragon heard his warning and hurriedly crawled out of the ruins. It forcefully circulated its energy and stabilized its magic energy. Its aura had just stabilized when the second bolt of heavenly lightning arrived. Kaboom! A heaven-shaking explosion resounded through the air, reverberating through the horizon for several thousand li. Two bolts of heavenly lightning, each 1,000 feet long, came down from the pitch-black vortex of tribulation clouds at the same time, hurtling toward the little black dragon. The two bolts of heavenly lightning were both gold and red. They contained a special lightning attribute and were incomparably violent. The little black dragon was deeply shocked by this sight and fell into a daze for a moment. It had clearly not expected that there would be two bolts of heavenly lightning. Such a bizarre occurrence had never occurred before. It was completely defenseless. Ji Tianqing was also stunned. His pupils constricted as a thought flashed through his mind. Two bolts of heavenly lightning? Could the little black dragon's heavenly tribulation be the legendary? The next moment, the two bolts of heavenly lightning struck the little black dragon. Boom! With a deafening boom, endless scorched earth flew into the sky, blotting out the sun. The scorched earth for 100 li was instantly transformed into a pitch-black abyss, black smoke rising from it. The earth within 1,000 miles was trembling, and the dozens of mountain peaks in the surroundings were also trembling. Many of the tall mountains cracked and collapsed. After the dust settled, Ji Tianqing could clearly see that the little black dragon was lying in the pitch-black abyss, black smoke rising from its body. Its back was a mess of flesh and blood. Some cracks and holes had been charred black. It was clear that the little black dragon had been distracted during the tribulation and had not been able to block it in time, resulting in it being heavily injured. Ji Tianqing was filled with worry as he hurriedly sent a message of warning. Little black dragon, no one can help you with the tribulation. You can only rely on yourself. Your heavenly tribulation is extraordinary. It is very likely to be the legendary ancient god's tribulation. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. This is the most dangerous heavenly tribulation. You must give it your all. The little black dragon was currently struggling in the abyss, its heart filled with confusion and fear. After hearing Ji Tianqing's reminder, it finally understood the reason. It hurriedly pulled itself together and quickly healed its injuries, adjusting its magical power and aura. Old Ji, why is my heavenly tribulation different from Qian Yu's? Why would I attract the ancient divine tribulation? Ji Tianqing looked up at the sky and saw that the third heavenly thunder was about to condense in the tribulation cloud vortex. He quickly explained, I don't know the specific reason now. However, I am certain that it has something to do with your divine dragon bloodline or the divine dragon crystal that you refined. The little black dragon immediately understood what he meant. If it wasn't for the fact that its divine dragon bloodline was special and had attracted the ancient divine tribulation, then it was definitely because of the divine dragon crystal. That mystical dragon crystal was the legacy crystal of an ancient mystical dragon. That mystical dragon had already reached the deity realm when it was alive. Very quickly, the third heavenly thunder descended. The situation was just as Ji Tianqing had predicted. 4 pillars of lightning descended from the tribulation cloud vortex at the same time. Each pillar of lightning was gold and red, and they were twice as powerful as before. The little black dragon's eyes were extremely grave. Without hesitation, it roared and transformed into its 10-kilometer-long divine dragon body. Rhea! As it roared, its body erupted with black light that condensed into a 10-kilometer-wide barrier that protected its body. Reverse dragon veils the heavens. The pitch-black barrier seemed almost tangible, exuding a mysterious and powerful aura. However, even the barrier seemed rather fragile in the face of these 4 terrifying heavenly thunders, unable to withstand a single blow. Boom! Crack! With a crisp explosion, the pitch-black barrier collapsed, transforming into millions of shards of black light that scattered in all directions. 4 dazzling heavenly thunders pierced through the shards and simultaneously struck the little black dragon. The pitiful little black dragon was once again blasted into the pitch-black abyss. The abyss expanded to a radius of 200 kilometers, unleashing shockwaves of lightning and fire that burned the surrounding forest to ash. The earth for 1,000 kilometers fiercely swayed, and massive gullies appeared in the ground. Some mountains collapsed, and large swathes of forest were destroyed. The little black dragon was struck by the 4 heavenly thunders, and wounds appeared on its massive body and 5 dragon claws. Several hundred dragon scales fell from its body, and large droplets of dragon blood sprayed out. Its injuries were even more severe, and it appeared to be in a rather sorry state. Fortunately, the pitch-black barrier had neutralized 40% of the heavenly thunder's power. Although its injuries had worsened, it had not lost its ability to resist. It quickly gathered its energy and flew out of the abyss. After the first 3 heavenly thunders, the tribulation cloud vortex began to change. Using this chance, the little black dragon left the abyss and flew 100 kilometers away. 30 seconds later, the massive tribulation cloud vortex was covered in a layer of dark purple. The 4th heavenly thunder finally descended. Boom! Crack! 2,000-foot-long heavenly thunders exploded from the tribulation cloud vortex. Each heavenly thunder had 3 colors, consisting of purple, gold, and red lightning. Its power was 3 times greater than before. Upon seeing this, Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted as he muttered to himself, as expected, it's the ancient divine tribulation. There's no mistaking it. The first 3 heavenly thunders were 1, 2, and 4 heavenly thunders. The middle 3 heavenly thunders were 2, 4, and 8 heavenly thunders. The final 3 heavenly thunders were said to be 4, 8, and 16 heavenly thunders. It was the number 1 forbidden tribulation of the ancient era. At the same time, the little black dragon used a secret art. Its massive body curled up into a ball. 5 colored lights surged out of its body, forming a shield around its body to protect it. Boom! With a massive boom, the 5-colored shield was shattered by the 2 heavenly thunders. The little black dragon was also smashed into the ground, its injuries even more severe. Dragon blood gushed out of its body, and many of its dragon scales fell off. The 100-kilometer stretch of forest beneath it was also reduced to scorched earth and ruins. But the little black dragon was extremely tenacious. Enduring its pain, it quickly regrouped. Before long, the 5th heavenly thunder descended. 4 heavenly thunders shot out of the tribulation cloud vortex and blasted at the little black dragon. The little black dragon calmly took out an ancient bronze compass and poured all its dermic energy into it. Bas! The ancient bronze compass immediately expanded to 5 kilometers in size, blotting out the sun as it floated above the little black dragon's head. This was a tribulation-grade defensive treasure that Ji Tianqing had given it. It was an antique from 1,000 years ago and was specially made to help it transcend the tribulation. Boom! Crack! With an earth-shaking boom, the 4 heavenly thunders blasted the ancient bronze compass out of the sky, smashing it into the scorched earth and ruins. Although this treasure had helped the little black dragon block the heavenly thunders, it was still not enough. Chapter 18:18. The sun was about to set, and the world gradually became dark. At this moment, 2 dazzling streams of light flew over the forest from west to east. There were 2 middle-aged men in the streams of light. They looked to be in their 40s and had an extraordinary aura. The man on the left wore a green robe. He was thin and had an elegant temperament. He was dressed like a scholar. The man on the right had a strong build. He wore a black robe and a large black cloak. His whole body was filled with a murderous aura. Both of them were powerhouses in the crossing calamity realm. They flew as fast as lightning without making a sound. Suddenly, both of them saw a huge black cloud vortex in the sky in front of them. The vortex was surrounded by gray clouds. There were strong gales and flashes of lightning. Every now and then, a few bolts of lightning would strike down from the black cloud vortex. Seeing this scene, the 2 of them revealed shocked expressions. They were quite surprised. It's really strange. This place is near the border of the Luo Shui kingdom. It has always been deserted. Why is there someone undergoing tribulation here? Master Lu, look at the scale of the tribulation cloud vortex. It has a radius of 100 miles. Several bolts of lightning struck down from the tribulation cloud vortex at the same time. The 2 of them discussed with each other through telepathy. The middle-aged scholar called Master Lu frowned and said in disbelief, "How is this possible? We've both gone through 5 tribulations. We're quite knowledgeable. But we've never heard of anyone's tribulation that would strike down several bolts of lightning at the same time. Song Feng, are our eyes playing tricks on us?" The black-robed man called Song Feng waved his large cloak and accelerated forward. "I've never seen such a strange thing in my life. It'll be a pity if I don't go and see what's going on." Master Lu quickly followed and reminded him through telepathy, "Song Feng, the tribulation is so strange. The person undergoing the tribulation is definitely not an ordinary person. If we go and see someone undergoing the tribulation and get into trouble, won't it delay our mission? You should know that if something goes wrong with the mission and Marshal Saint Yi blames us, we'll be in big trouble." Song Feng only hesitated for a moment and said stubbornly, "I won't forget Marshal Saint Ye's mission, let alone delay it. But I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't see it with my own eyes." "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I won't show up rashly." Seeing that he had already made up his mind, Lu Shi didn't try to persuade him any further. After all, he was also very curious and wanted to see what was going on. In just a short 100 breaths, the 2 of them had flown over 2,000 miles and arrived near the tribulation cloud vortex. When they were still 100 kilometers away, they saw that the person transcending the tribulation beneath the enormous and shocking vortex of tribulation clouds wasn't a human, but an enormous dragon that was 5 kilometers long. Such an outcome caused Song Feng and Lu Shi to be pleasantly surprised, and their eyes widened in surprise. "Oh my God! I thought it was a martial monarch undergoing a tribulation. I didn't expect it to be a black dragon. That's not a flood dragon, but a legendary divine dragon. No wonder it's undergoing its tribulation in such a desolate place. It's a divine beast, the black dragon." This was a huge surprise. Everyone knew that dragons were hard to find and only the three martial gods could capture and tame them. Who would have thought that we would actually encounter a divine dragon undergoing tribulation here? Song Feng and Lu Shi looked at each other and saw the ecstasy and astonishment in each other's eyes. Even though they were experts who had cultivated for thousands of years, their state of mind had long been calm and indifferent. However, the appearance of the divine dragon was too surprising and shocking. It caused their blood to boil and their bodies to tremble with excitement. At this moment, the two of them had forgotten their mission and threw everything to the back of their minds. The same thought appeared in their minds at the same time. Song Feng, that divine dragon is hiding in this primitive mountain range and cultivating. It hasn't been discovered by the Xueqi divine nation until now. It's a gift from the heavens for us to encounter it today. We can't miss it no matter what. Lu Shi, even if there's a danger of eternal damnation, I'll do my best to subdue that black dragon. If we can successfully tame a divine dragon, why would we need to rely on the background of the Broken Heaven Alliance? Why would we need to work for Marshal Saint Yi? From today onwards, we'll definitely be able to break through to the Martial Saint realm and even have a chance to reach the Martial God realm. Lu Shi, who had always been calm and collected, was also overwhelmed by the huge surprise. Song Feng's words had aroused his passion and imagination. He nodded continuously and shouted with a flushed face, "With the divine dragon in our hands, we can travel the world and go to a place outside the sea. We can become gods and ancestors and live a carefree life." Song Feng clenched his fists and shouted, "A lifetime of glory, splendor, wealth, and a future of martial arts all depend on this." Obviously, the two of them were sure that the divine dragon was an ownerless divine beast that lived in seclusion and cultivated in this mountain range. Otherwise, when the experts of the Luo divine nation discovered the divine dragon, they would have captured it and offered it to the Luo martial god. It was a gift from the heavens for them to encounter the divine dragon. It was a blessing that they had cultivated for 3 lifetimes. It was the greatest opportunity of their lives. At this moment, the divine dragon was undergoing its 6th tribulation. There were a total of 8 tricolored lightning bolts that descended from the sky toward the divine dragon. The divine dragon took out the ancient bronze compass again and injected a vast amount of magic power into it. It lay across the sky above its head. Kaboom! There was a loud explosion and the ancient bronze compass exploded on the spot. It shattered into countless pieces and scattered among the charred ruins. The divine dragon was also engulfed by the 8 bolts of lightning and blasted into the charred ruins. 200 miles of land had turned into a deep abyss. Endless dust and smoke covered a radius of a few hundred miles. When the dust and smoke dissipated, the divine dragon was lying in the abyss covered in blood. Its body was constantly twitching. Its injuries were extremely miserable. There was not a single place on its body that was unharmed. It was covered in wounds and bloody holes. Boiling dragon blood poured out of the black charred wounds and spilled onto the ground. Thousands of dragon scale fragments were scattered around its body. His appearance was simply too miserable. Its injuries were extremely severe. Its life force and magic power were in chaos. It only had about 40% of its strength left. However, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky had not dissipated. It was undergoing a strange transformation. Not long after, when the divine dragon was coiled up in the abyss and barely managed to recover its magic power, the tribulation cloud vortex had also completed its transformation. The black tribulation cloud vortex was covered in a layer of blood red. Kaboom! 4 blood-red pillars of lightning descended from the sky, aiming straight for the little black dragon. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's expression was very complicated. He muttered to himself, "Mental demon tribulation." The reason why he felt so complicated was because the divine dragon's injuries were too severe. If it was struck by the lightning bolts that were even more powerful, its body might be destroyed or even killed. At least the mental demon tribulation would not harm its body. It would only test its temperament and soul. However, Ji Tianqing could not help but worry. The mental demon tribulation was more terrifying than ordinary lightning. It was strange and unpredictable. If the divine dragon could not resolve it, its soul would be destroyed and it would die completely. Chapter 18-19. The blood-red pillar of lightning struck the black dragon. However, there was no apocalyptic scene. The lightning turned into a layer of blood-red light that enveloped the black dragon, sealing it firmly. It fell into silence as if it was in a deep sleep. No one knew what kind of test and calamity it was going through, and whether it could survive it successfully. On a mountain peak 200 miles away, Master Lu and Song Feng stood on the mountain peak, staring at the black dragon with anticipation. As expected of a divine dragon, the heavenly tribulation it triggered is different from ours. It's so special. Master Lu, when the black dragon finishes its tribulation, let's make a move immediately. We can't let it escape. The two of them were secretly accumulating their dermic powers, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time to snatch the black dragon. Lu Shi was a more composed person. He released his spiritual perception and scanned the surroundings to check on the situation. His divine sense covered a radius of more than 100 miles. After checking carefully, he was completely at ease. Other than the two of us and the black dragon, there are no other powerhouses or demon beasts within a radius of 150 miles. There are also no formations or traps. We can rest assured. Song Feng glanced at him and chuckled. Master Lu, aren't you being too cautious? This place is deserted. There's not even a shadow. How could anyone come here? Master Lu said indifferently, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's never wrong to be cautious. After saying that, the two of them stopped talking and waited patiently for the black dragon to finish its tribulation. However, they did not know that on a mountain peak 200 miles away to their east, a white-robed youth was also waiting for the black dragon to finish its tribulation. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. The setting sun had completely disappeared, and the world became dark. Night was about to arrive. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky finally dissipated. The blood-red light shield that enveloped the black dragon also collapsed with a series of cracking sounds. After the blood-red light dissipated, the black dragon opened its eyes and regained its freedom of movement. It seemed to have experienced great fear. Its body was still trembling as it panted heavily. A complicated look flickered in his large dragon eyes, constantly changing. No. How could this be? This is impossible. The dragon clan is noble. It's definitely not a criminal. It muttered hoarsely, its tone filled with grief, indignation, and unwillingness. However, the tribulation cloud vortex high up in the sky turned into a ball of sacred golden light that descended from the sky and enveloped it. Boundless divine power poured into its body, calming it down immediately. This divine golden light was a reward given by the heavens to those who had survived the heavenly tribulation. It had a miraculous effect that could quickly heal injuries and increase one's strength. The black dragon had undergone the primordial divinity tribulation, so the divine light reward he received was even more extraordinary. The surging divine power entered its body and healed all of its injuries at an incredible speed, replenishing the magic power it had consumed. Its strength and aura were also skyrocketing. 100 breaths of time passed, and the divine golden light was completely absorbed. The black dragon's injuries were all healed, and its body was in perfect condition. Its strength had also increased by about 6 times. Presently, it had finally broken through to the first level of the tribulation stage. It opened its deep eyes, and there was no longer anger and panic in its eyes. Instead, it became very calm and composed. Just as it turned its head to look to the east and was about to report the good news to Ji Tianqing, Shua! 2 streaks of light flew over from the west and landed beside it, one on its left and one on its right. The black dragon took a closer look and saw 2 tribulation stage powerhouses among the 2 streaks of light. It frowned, and its eyes were filled with vigilance. At this moment, Master Lu, who was dressed in a green robe, said with a pleasant expression, "Brother Black Dragon, congratulations on successfully passing the tribulation. The two of us admire and yearn for the dragon god very much, so we suddenly showed up to discuss something with you." Master Lu's eyes and tone were very sincere. Song Feng was secretly amused and muttered, "Master Lu, you're too polite to this black dragon, aren't you? It has just entered the tribulation stage. Why do we have to talk nonsense with it? We can just kidnap it." Master Lu's expression did not change, but he secretly explained, "Song Feng, don't be reckless. Legend has it that the dragon god is extremely arrogant and will not easily submit to others. If we forcibly kidnap it, it will be counterproductive." Song Feng raised his eyebrows and said with an indifferent attitude, "All right, you can be the one to persuade it. If it really doesn't work, we'll take action." Master Lu cupped his hands at the black dragon and said sincerely, "Brother Black Dragon, although you're hiding here to cultivate, it's not a long-term solution. You'll be discovered sooner or later. Why don't we bring you to an otherworldly paradise where you can cultivate without being disturbed and have endless resources and treasures?" However, before Lu Shi could finish speaking, the black dragon interrupted him. "You want me to follow you?" Master Lu smiled and nodded expectantly. "That's right. We'll bring you to the safest and most suitable place for cultivation. We'll even do our best to help you." "There's no need," the black dragon said indifferently. "The two of you are not worthy of me following you." The black dragon was a taciturn person and was not good with words. It could see Master Lu and Song Feng's intentions and did not have a good impression of them. Therefore, it was even more direct with its words. Lu Shi was stunned, and an awkward expression appeared on his face. Song Feng could not suppress the anger in his heart. He sneered and said, "Haha, no wonder Master Lu said that divine dragons are extremely arrogant. It seems that it's true. However, this little black dragon really doesn't know what's good for you. Now, it's not up to you whether you want to follow us or not. If you know what's good for you, you'd better submit to us obediently so that you won't have to suffer more physical pain. Don't try to resist. With your strength in the first stage of the tribulation stage, you're definitely no match for us." As he said that, Song Feng swung his large black cloak and revealed the treasured saber at his waist. His whole body emitted a strong and domineering aura. The black dragon was obviously stunned. Then it showed a sympathetic look and said in a strange tone, "The two of you, are you sure you want to fight?" Master Lu frowned and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, "This black dragon is so calm. Could it be that it has helpers or backers?" Song Feng misunderstood and thought that the black dragon was afraid. He laughed confidently and said, "Haha, now you're afraid? Then what are you waiting for? Why don't you submit to us?" When he heard that, the black dragon stared straight at him. His eyes were filled with pity, as if he was looking at an idiot. At the same time, a handsome figure came to the scene silently and appeared behind Song Feng and Master Lu. "How dare you poach me in front of me? You don't take me seriously at all." A cold and indifferent voice suddenly sounded in the night sky. Master Lu and Song Feng were shocked. They quickly turned around and saw a young man in a white robe standing in the night sky thousands of feet away. Chapter 18:20. Song Feng and Master Lu's expressions turned gloomy. Both of them held their sword hilts and looked at the white-robed young man warily. "Who are you?" Master Lu frowned and asked. Song Feng licked the corner of his mouth and said in a sinister tone, "Kid, everything has to be first come, first served. We were the first to discover this black dragon. If you want to interfere, you have to consider whether you are powerful enough." Ji Tianqing's sneer deepened as he said in a playful tone, "First come, first served? The black dragon is my war pet." Hearing those words, Lu Shi's face immediately darkened and a deep frown appeared on his forehead. Although he was eager to get the black dragon, it was a divine beast with a master. His instincts made him want to give up and back down. But before he could say anything, Song Feng sneered, "Haha, do you think it is just because you say so? Who can prove it for you? Besides, even if the black dragon is really your war pet, so what? A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Only the two of us are worthy to be its master. Boy, we must get the black dragon. If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave and we can pretend nothing happened." Apparently, the temptation of the black dragon had blinded Song Feng's conscience and made him lose his mind. Ji Tianqing sneered and said mockingly, "So, you are going to rob me openly?" As he said that, he accumulated magic power in his body and his aura surged. Master Lu sensed that something was wrong and he quickly said, "Song Feng, don't be rash. The black dragon is already owned. It is unwise to rob it openly. This boy has reached the crossing calamity stage at such a young age and owns a divine dragon. He is not an ordinary person. He must have a powerful background." Wait. Before Teacher Lu could finish speaking, Song Feng interrupted him and shouted in a low voice, "Teacher Lu, this is the Luo Xueqi kingdom, not the Heaven End kingdom. What are you afraid of? Encountering a black dragon is the biggest opportunity in our lives. If we miss this opportunity, We will regret it for the rest of our lives. Don't hesitate. Let's kill that brat and tame that black dragon together. Then with a clang, he pulled out his treasured saber and slashed out a 300-meter-long saber light towards Ji Tianqing at lightning speed. Mountain Breaker. The 300-meter-long dark golden saber light slashed toward Ji Tianqing with an unstoppable force. Its power was terrifying. Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he sneered. As expected, you're blinded by greed. Since you're so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish. As he spoke, he raised his right hand and blasted out a silver fist light that smashed towards Cong Feng. Star-shattering fist. Boom. The sword radiance and the fist radiance collided, and a loud, muffled sound erupted, spreading across the sky for hundreds of miles. In that instant, the sword light and fist radiance collapsed at the same time, exploding into billions of fragments. Hundreds of miles of the night sky were illuminated as if it were daytime. The raging shockwave fiercely hit Cong Feng and forced him to retreat 3,000 meters. Master Lu hurriedly pulled out his sword and cast a spell to unleash a sky full of sword radiance toward Ji Tianqing. However, the black dragon met the attack head-on, twisting its 10-mile-long body and sweeping away all the sword radiance in the sky. The two of them were entangled, each using their own unique skills to fight in the night sky. Cong Feng was only slightly injured. He was shocked and angry as he swung his sword to attack again. Brat, I underestimated you just now. But now you don't have the chance. Cong Feng shouted angrily as his body lit up with flames. He unleashed 100% of his magic power and slashed out a sky full of sword radiance. Swoosh! 36 dazzling giant swords were arranged in the direction of the Big Dipper star. They carried the mysterious power of the array and slashed toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was fearless. His sleeves fluttered as he stood in the night sky, looking down at Cong Feng. With his left hand behind his back, he raised his right hand and pointed to the sky. He shouted indifferently, "Sword, come!" Suddenly, a dazzling golden radiance lit up in the dark sky and fell from the sky like a meteor. In just a short moment, the dazzling golden radiance descended on the mountain range. It turned out that the dazzling golden radiance was a giant golden sword that was thousands of feet tall. The giant sword was formed by the astral fire and contained a violent power that could destroy the world. Slash! Ji Tianqing shouted coldly as he waved his right hand and pointed at Cong Feng in front of him. Before Cong Feng could even react, the 3 kilometers-long sword had already struck him in the head. Bam! A deafening explosion erupted and reverberated through the heavens, shaking everything within 800 miles. The giant golden radiant sword instantly shattered Cong Feng's magic power shield and smashed it into pieces. Even his divine soul was destroyed. Then, the giant sword hit the ruins below. A pitch-black abyss with a radius of dozens of miles and a depth of hundreds of miles was formed on the ground. The dazzling golden radiance flew into the night sky with endless dust and covered the sky. The violent and terrifying movement lasted for a long time before it dissipated. When the dust and golden radiance dissipated, Cong Feng had disappeared completely. His physical body and divine soul had turned into powder and scattered in the abyss, returning to heaven and earth. Not far away in the sky, the Black Dragon and Master Lu stopped fighting temporarily. Master Lu saw with his own eyes that the golden sword fell from the sky and smashed Cong Feng into pieces. He was so scared that his face turned pale and his heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect that the seemingly ordinary white-robed young man had such terrifying strength. The white-robed young man was only in the first stage of the crossing tribulation stage. How could he kill Cong Feng, who was in the 5th stage of the crossing tribulation stage, in one move? This was simply an unheard-of miracle. What kind of monster was that white-robed young man? Just as Master Lu was inexplicably shocked, Ji Tianqing stepped on the night sky and arrived in front of him. The black dragon also shrank its body to thousands of feet long and flew back to Ji Tianqing's side. Ji Tianqing stood on the back of the black dragon and looked at Master Lu coldly. He said indifferently, "The divine dragon is right here. Come and get it." Master Lu saw that he had no intention of making a move and slowly kept his sword. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Young master, you must be joking. Although the divine dragon is precious, it already has an owner. Although I desire the divine dragon, I won't lose my conscience and kill to snatch it." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked in a playful tone, "Your companion was killed by me. As a friend, don't you plan to avenge him? Master Lu shook his head again and said bitterly, Song Feng and I have worked together for dozens of years. Indeed, we have been through life and death situations together. However, our ideals are different. Today's matter is our fault. We were greedy and tried to snatch your black dragon. Although I am heartbroken and regretful about Song Feng's death, I won't avenge him. He asked for it. This lowly one apologizes to young master. Please forgive this lowly one's offense. Master Lu cupped his hands and bowed to Ji Tianxing. If you don't have anything else, I will take my leave now. I won't disturb you any more. After saying that, Master Lu turned and was about to leave. Chapter 1821. The scene of Ji Tianxing killing Song Feng with a single strike was too shocking for Master Lu. He was fearful of this mysterious white-robed youth from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, he only wanted to escape as soon as possible and get away from this troublesome place. However, just as he turned around, he was stopped by Ji Tianxing. An invisible and powerful force enveloped him, causing his body to stiffen. Should he forcefully break free and escape? That was obviously not realistic. Master Lu did not think he had a chance to escape. Helpless, he could only stop and turn around to look at Ji Tianxing. Is there anything else, young master? He pretended to be calm as he looked at Ji Tianxing. As usual, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Ji Tianxing looked at him from head to toe, then said slowly, Judging by the looks of you and Song Feng, you don't look like evil people. Moreover, your attire and facial features do not look like people from the Luo Shui divine nation. You came from the west, and now you're going to the west. Hundreds of thousands of miles to the west is the border between the two nations. You must be from the Heaven End divine nation. At this point, Ji Tianxing's face turned cold, and his eyes became much sharper. He asked in a deep voice, Speak, who are you? What are you trying to do by sneaking into the Luo Shui divine nation? Seeing Ji Tianxing speaking so logically, Master Lu was even more shocked and vigilant. His eyes also changed. He lowered his head slightly, not daring to look directly at Ji Tianxing's deep and sharp eyes. Ji Tianxing did not open his mouth to threaten him. He looked straight ahead and walked step by step toward him. Every step was as heavy as a mountain. Stepping on the night sky, he condensed an invisible pressure and pressed down on Master Lu. This was a lost ancient secret technique called the heaven-shaking 9 steps. When Ji Tianxing took 8 steps, the invisible pressure of the divine sense was as heavy as a mountain. Under the suppression, Lu Shi's body was hunched over, and his entire body was drenched in sweat. His soul was trembling, and his eyes were filled with fear and terror. He finally couldn't withstand the enormous pressure and slowly stretched out his trembling hands. He cupped his fists and said, Young master's eyes are indeed sharp. You can see through our origins from these little clues. You guessed right. Song Feng and I are both from the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. We just rushed over from the border. To tell you the truth, we're from the Broken Heaven Alliance, and we're here on a mission. Broken Sky Alliance? Ji Tianxing frowned slightly as a few figures appeared in his mind. He recalled the few young experts he had met in the Mountain of Flames. He asked expressionlessly, You infiltrated the border and infiltrated the Luo Shui divine nation for what mission? This. Teacher Lu was immediately put in a difficult position, and said with a bitter expression, Young master, this is the secret of our Broken Heaven Alliance, please don't force me to answer. However, I can guarantee that our mission will only involve trade, and we will definitely not harm the Luo Shui god nation. Ji Tianxing stared at him with sharp eyes. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice, You're lying. What mission are you on? Tell me the truth. Teacher Lu's reaction was normal, and his performance was flawless. However, the subtle changes in his eyes and the fluctuations of his divine sense could not be hidden from Ji Tianxing. Teacher Lu was immediately filled with anxiety, and he hurriedly waved his hands and said, Young master, I'm telling the truth. Our mission is only to deliver a secret letter to the Wind Moon City. Without waiting for him to finish his words, Ji Tianxing waved his hand, and a huge golden palm shot out, grabbing Lu Shi in its palm. Swoosh! The giant golden palm grabbed Teacher Lu and brought him back to Ji Tianxing. Teacher Lu struggled with all his might, but he couldn't break free from the giant palm. His magic power was also sealed by the giant palm, and he couldn't circulate it. Ji Tianqing shouted with a cold expression, "Either you tell the truth or you'll be buried with Song Feng." As he spoke, he gradually unleashed his power and used the giant golden palm to crush Teacher Lu. Teacher Lu's body was crushed by the giant palm, and his bones began to dislocate and deform. The intense pain caused his body to convulse and break out in cold sweat, and he let out a painful scream. "Ah! You, don't go too far. I'm telling the truth. It's useless even if you kill me." Ji Tianqing was not moved at all, and continued to crush him with the giant palm. He slowly said, "Speaking of the Broken Heaven Alliance, I have some understanding of it. It's said that it's one of the strongest forces in the Heaven End God Nation. A few months ago, I happened to meet 4 young experts in the Flame Mountain, and they were all elites of the Broken Heaven Alliance. They were looking for the Golden Lotus in the Flame Mountain, but they were surrounded by many demon beasts. At the critical moment, I saved them, and after talking with them, I learned of their origins. If I remember correctly, the names of the 4 young elites were Li Gan, Zhao Guangxiong, Qing Wan." Teacher Lu was still struggling in pain, but when he heard Ji Tianqing's words, he immediately calmed down. When he heard the names of the young elites, his expression changed drastically, and he revealed a strange look. Ji Tianqing stared at him and asked with a playful tone, "Looking at your reaction, you seem to know them, right?" Teacher Lu was silent for a long time, and then said with a complicated tone, "That's right, Qing Wan is the daughter of my best friend, and Li Gan is my junior brother. They were looking for the Golden Lotus in the Flame Mountain, and when they were in danger, they were saved by a white-robed young master. I didn't expect that the white-robed young master who saved their lives was you." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a playful smile, "Maybe this is fate. It was the will of the heavens. Teacher Lu, you're a scholar who has read a lot, and you should understand many things, and have your own principles and integrity. The reason why I didn't kill you is also because of this. Now, I'll give you one last chance to confess." Teacher Lu was different from Song Feng. His background was very complicated, and he only joined the Broken Heaven Alliance to settle down. For 200 years, he never relied on the power of the Broken Heaven Alliance to commit murder, arson, or robbery. Just as Ji Tianqing said, he was a man of principles, and he believed in the existence of the gods, karma, and so on. After a long silence and hesitation, Teacher Lu clenched his teeth and made a decision. He lowered his head dejectedly, and said with an old and powerless voice, "Young master saved Qing Wan and Li Gan's lives, and is their savior. Today, Song Feng and I fell into your hands. Maybe this is the will of the heavens, and it's my punishment. To be honest, Song Feng and I sneaked into the Luo River God Nation under Marshal Saint Ye's orders, and we were going to the Wind Moon City to create chaos and disaster." Hearing Teacher Lu's words, Ji Tianqing frowned, and his eyes became even colder. "Marshal Saint Yi? Which Marshal Saint Yi?" Teacher Lu revealed an ashamed expression, and said in a low voice, "The Divine Guard Governor of the Heaven End God Nation, Sword Saint Yi Lu Xueqi." Chapter 1822. As soon as Teacher Lu mentioned Marshal Saint Ye's identity, Ji Tianqing suddenly realized. His face also darkened, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. After a moment of silence, he suddenly sneered. "Ha ha ha! This Yi Lu Xueqi is really sinister and despicable. The 2 armies are facing each other at the border, and they are in a stalemate for the Sunset Divine Mine, scheming against each other secretly. Yi Lu Xueqi is guarding the border, and he is indeed scheming, not hesitating to use such a despicable move. He sent you to infiltrate the Luo Shui Divine Nation, and create chaos and disaster in the major cities at the border, so that you can draw away a portion of the army and reduce his pressure." Ji Tianqing exposed Marshal Saint Ye's despicable plan, and Teacher Lu's face instantly turned ugly. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was really angry, and the murderous intent in his eyes surged, he was a little worried, and quickly explained, "Young master, this is Marshal Saint Ye's plan, we are just following orders." Ji Tianqing did not comment, and asked in a deep voice, "It is said that the Broken Heaven Alliance is a civilian martial arts organization. Although it is distributed in the Heaven End Divine Nation, it is not under the jurisdiction of the Heaven End Divine Nation. Marshal Saint Yi led a large number of divine guards to guard the border. Why didn't he send the experts under him to carry out the mission, but sent you to cause trouble? Could it be that the Broken Heaven Alliance has submitted to the Heaven End Divine Nation, And also has to listen to the divine nation's orders? Teacher Lu quickly shook his head, and said with a blank expression, "Young master, I don't understand this matter, and dare not speculate." Ji Tianqing also understood, with Teacher Lu's strength, he could only be considered an elite expert in the Broken Heaven Alliance, and could not be a branch leader or hallmaster with real power. He did not pursue this matter, and asked again, "Other than you and Song Feng, how many people did Marshal Saint Yi send to infiltrate the Luo Shui divine nation to cause trouble?" Teacher Lu did not dare to hide and quickly answered, "As far as I know, there are a total of 19 groups of people acting at the same time, and they are all elites of the Broken Heaven Alliance. Each group has 2 to 3 people, and they are responsible for disrupting a major city." Ji Tianqing slightly nodded, and said in a cold voice, "In the border area, there are more than 20 major cities near the Sunset Divine Mine. If all 19 main cities fell into chaos, they would definitely be able to hold back hundreds of thousands of troops. When the army arrives to reinforce the main cities, Yilu Shui will seize the opportunity to seize the Sunset Divine Mine. What a vicious plan." Teacher Lu lowered his head and said nervously, "Gongzi, this is all the information I know, and I've told you everything truthfully. I'm doing this to repay you for saving Qingwan and Li Gan's lives. Furthermore, my actions have betrayed the heaven-shattering alliance. If anyone were to find out, I would have nowhere to hide." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said expressionlessly, "Don't worry, I'm not a bloodthirsty person. I won't kill you to silence you. You should leave. Stay away from this troublesome place, lest you attract a fatal disaster." After which, Ji Tianqing released the golden palm and released Lu Shi. Lu Shi felt as though he had been pardoned, and his face was filled with gratitude. He hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. "Thank you for sparing my life. I'll take my leave now." After bowing, he didn't even bother to circulate his qi to heal his injuries. He hurriedly turned around and flew away. Not long after, Lu Shi's figure disappeared into the night sky. Ji Tianqing stood on the black dragon's back and looked at the western night sky with a deep frown. The black dragon frowned and asked, "Old Ji, what do we do now? Do we still go to the Sunset Divine Mine? How about we rush to the main cities and deal with the heaven-shattering alliance first?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said in a deep voice, "If Yilu Shui's divine guards infiltrate the Luo Shui divine nation, they will definitely give themselves away. If they are caught, it will cause a war between the two nations. He used the heaven-shattering alliance to create chaos because he doesn't want to be exposed. Therefore, the dozen or so heaven-shattering alliance experts will definitely hide their tracks. If we rush over without a target, it will be difficult to find them. It will only be a waste of time. Our top priority is to get to the Sunset Divine Mine as soon as possible and discuss with Holy Emperor Chongyun. As for the heaven-shattering alliance experts, I will send a message to Granny Long and have her think of a way to deal with them." After speaking, Ji Tianqing took out a communication jade slip and sent out a message. Whoosh! The jade slip turned into a stream of light and quickly flew into the night sky and disappeared. After sending out the jade slip, Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He rode the black dragon to the west and rushed to the Sunset Divine Mine as quickly as possible. Originally, Ji Tianqing was still a day's journey from the Sunset Divine Mine. After the black dragon broke through to the Tribulation Transcendence realm, it completed a miraculous transformation. Its flying speed had increased by 6 times, which was even faster than Ji Tianqing's speed. 18 hours later, it was noon of the second day and the black dragon finally arrived at the Sunset Divine Mine. The Sunset Divine Mine was named after the Sunset Mountain Range. At the border of the two divine nations, there was an ancient mountain range with a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. It was filled with primitive forests and towering mountains. This area was very rich in heaven and earth spirit qi, and the underground mines were extremely rich. However, this place was remote and uninhabited, so it became a paradise for all kinds of ferocious demon beasts. Thousands of years ago, the Luo Shui divine nation discovered endless mineral resources in the Sunset Mountain Range. Thus, the Luo Shui divine nation sent out millions of soldiers and craftsmen. After spending hundreds of years, they opened up the famous Sunset Divine Mine. After thousands of years of development, the scale of the Sunset Divine Mine had expanded by more than 10 times. There were millions of soldiers stationed at the Sunset Divine Mine, patrolling day and night to protect the mine from being invaded. The entire Sunset Divine Mine was divided into hundreds of mining areas. There were more than 2 million miners working in each of the mining areas, mining day and night. Ji Tianqing arrived near the Sunset Divine Mine and put the Black Dragon into the Sword World to avoid shocking the world. He flew over the vast mountain range alone and looked down at the situation below. On the surface, there was an endless stretch of towering mountain ranges and a sea of dark green primeval forests below. But in reality, there were palaces and buildings in some mountain peaks and valleys every 5,000 miles. These palaces were used as camps for the mining areas. Those mining areas had names, and each camp could accommodate tens of thousands of miners and thousands of guards and supervisors. Even though the situation at the border was very tense and the armies of the two nations were facing each other, those mining areas were still operating normally. Ji Tianqing flew across the sky and quickly alerted the guards. He was surrounded by several teams. He showed his identity token and explained the purpose of his visit. The guards immediately bowed and apologized in fear. Ji Tianqing didn't care. He picked a guard captain and asked him to lead the way to Divine Emperor Chongyun. The guard captain seemed to have received a great honor. He was so excited that his face was flushed red. He hurriedly bowed to express his obedience. To be able to meet someone as important as Ji Tianqing and bring Ji Tianqing to meet Divine Emperor Chongyun was an honor that he didn't even dare to dream of. 6 hours later, the guard captain brought Ji Tianqing to the central region of the Sunset Divine Mine. They landed on a giant mountain that was 3,000 feet tall. This towering mountain was the core of the entire Setting Sun mountain range, and it was also the most majestic peak. Chapter 1823. In the afternoon, the scorching sun shone brightly. The setting sun peak was 10,000 meters tall, shrouded in the brilliant sunlight. It looked even more dazzling and magnificent. No one lived below the waist of the mountain. Vines and shrubs grew all over the mountain walls. The waist of the mountain was covered by white clouds and thick fog. The mountain walls were so steep that they were almost perfectly straight. There was a platform at the top of the mountain that was dozens of miles wide. It had already been built into a bustling city. There were tall and majestic city walls protecting it. Rows upon rows of houses and palaces sat in the city. They shone with golden light under the scorching sun. This city was named Setting Sun City. It had thousands of years of history and was one of the most important cities in the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom. The city was heavily guarded both inside and outside. Teams of armored guards with swords could be seen patrolling the city. Even in the sky outside of Sunset City, there were many guards riding spirit beasts and flying birds, circling and cruising in the sky. Ji Tianqing arrived at the gates of Setting Sun City. He was only allowed to enter after showing his identity token. Half an hour later, he passed through half of Setting Sun City and entered the Palace of Longevity. The Palace of Longevity was named after Holy Emperor Longevity. For thousands of years, Holy Emperor Longevity had been guarding this place. He was responsible for the safety and daily operations of the Setting Sun Divine Mine. At this moment, the Palace of Longevity was in a tense state of alert. There were guards and soldiers lined up both inside and outside. Many scouts and messengers hurried in and out of the Palace of Longevity to report and convey all kinds of news. Perhaps Holy Emperor Longevity had already received news that Ji Tianqing was coming. When he stepped into the palace and announced his identity, the guards all bowed respectfully to welcome him. A guard captain led him into the Palace of Longevity and arranged for him to stay in a courtyard called Pine Tree. Young Master Ji, Lord Holy Emperor has instructed that if you come, you should stay in Pine Tree temporarily. You must be tired from rushing over from the Luotian Mountain. Rest here today. Tomorrow, I will bring you to meet Lord Holy Emperor. After the guard captain explained the situation to Ji Tianqing, he tactfully withdrew from the courtyard. Ji Tianqing stood in the Pine Tree courtyard, looking around with an indifferent expression. The courtyard was located in the depths of the everlasting Luck Palace. It could be considered a quiet place amidst the chaos. The environment was extremely quiet and secluded, suitable for recuperation. Apart from him, there were also a dozen guards and 9 young maids in the courtyard. They were all there to serve him and were on standby at all times. Although Ji Tianqing had been on the road for more than 20 days, he didn't feel tired at all. However, with Holy Emperor Chongyun's arrangements, he could only stay for the time being and wait until they met tomorrow. The entire Sunset City is in a state of alert, and the Chongyun Palace is very busy. Looks like the situation at the border is getting more and more tense. I reckon that Holy Emperor Long Luck is already very busy, right? Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice. Then, he entered his bedroom and sat down to adjust his breathing. A day passed quickly. At noon the next day, Ji Tianqing was meditating in his room when footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. Then, he heard the guard captain respectfully reporting to young Master Ji, the Holy Emperor is here. Ji Tianqing stopped cultivating. He stood up and straightened his clothes before walking out of the room. He stood still in the courtyard and saw 6 golden-armored guards standing on both sides of the door. They respectfully knelt on the ground to welcome the Holy Emperor. A middle-aged man in a golden robe strode through the door and entered the courtyard. This man was 8 feet tall and had broad shoulders. He had a head of white hair that reached his waist and a dignified face. He exuded the arrogance and domineering aura of a martial saint. His steps were like the wind, and the wide purple cloak on his shoulders also fluttered in the wind. Ji Tianqing could obviously tell that this man was the everlasting luck martial saint who was in charge of the Sunset Divine Mine. Moreover, the everlasting luck martial saint's style of doing things was obviously swift and decisive. Other than the everlasting luck martial saint, there was also a tall and handsome young man behind him. This person had the strength of a tribulation stage cultivator. He looked somewhat similar to the everlasting luck martial saint, and there was an air of arrogance between his brows. Ji Tianqing guessed that this young man was most likely the everlasting luck martial saint's nephew. The everlasting luck martial saint arrived in the courtyard and stood 10 steps away from Ji Tianqing. After sizing him up, he smiled and said, "Welcome to the Sunset City, young Master Ji." Young Master Ji just arrived yesterday and must be mentally exhausted. I was also busy with military affairs, so I didn't receive you. Please forgive me, young Master Ji. The everlasting luck martial saint's voice was dignified and loud. His attitude towards Ji Tianqing was also more polite. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm as he cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Tianqing greets the everlasting luck divine emperor. No need for formalities. The everlasting luck martial saint nodded slightly and walked into the guest hall. Let's talk inside. Then, the 3 of them entered the guest hall and sat down. Immediately, a servant girl came forward to serve tea. The everlasting luck divine emperor sat on the main seat and looked kindly at Ji Tianqing. He asked, "Young Master Ji, although the scenery of the Sunset City can't be compared to the Luotian Mountain, it's still a rare scenic spot in the world. You can stay here for a while." Then, he pointed to the young man sitting on the right and introduced him. "This is my son, Su Chen. You're all young people, so you can get to know each other." Back then, Su Chen was also a god disciple of the divine nation. He cultivated on the Luotian Mountain for more than 20 years. "I believe you'll have something to talk about." Ji Tianqing looked at Su Chen and nodded slightly in greeting. Su Chen also looked at him with a smile and cupped his hands. Su Chen greets young Master Ji. "During this time, my father has been busy with government affairs. I'm afraid he has no time to accompany young Master Ji. During this time, I'll take care of young Master Ji on behalf of my father." Although Ji Tianqing didn't need anyone to accompany him, he couldn't reject Su Chen's politeness. Thus, he nodded. "Thank you, young Master Su." Then, Ji Tianqing looked at Divine Emperor Chongyun with a solemn expression. "Divine Emperor Chongyun, I believe Granny Long has told you that I'm here to resolve the danger of the Divine Mine. I saw the tense atmosphere inside and outside Setting Sun City and guessed that the situation at the border was worrying. Divine Emperor, can you tell me the specific situation at the border?" Hearing this, Su Chen frowned inwardly but didn't show it on his face. Divine Emperor Chongyun had expected this question. He said indifferently, "Before you came, Granny Long sent me a message and explained the situation. I believe you have some understanding of the situation at the Setting Sun Divine Mine. There are more than 260 mines in the Divine Mine. Each mine is managed by 2 commanders. There are hundreds of supervisors and tens of thousands of miners under them. There are more than 100 mines near the western border. More than 80 have been taken by the Heaven End Divine Nation. There are only a dozen mines left, but they have been invaded. Large amounts of ores and veins are lost every day. The armies of the Heaven End Divine Nation and the Heaven End Divine Nation are facing each other outside Drifting Cloud Mountain. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.